Hello, it's James from WSI here. Thank you very much for joining us once again this week. And my guest, I nearly said it in the other intro, it's the first time he ever had a repeat customer, but I'll give it this way. He's the first person with a repeat prescription. It is, of course, Dr. Tom Prichard. How are you doing, my friend?
There is a refill on all my prescriptions, by the way. So yeah, I'm welcome. Thanks for having me back, James.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. I was
Yeah.
explaining beforehand. I was looking at like the numbers you were bringing in with your interviews and stuff, and you seemed quite stunned. It was nearly 500,000 views combined for all the clips. Pretty amazing, I'd say.
Well, no, I think it's very cool. I think it's great. I was stunned. I was amazing. And I think it's cool that people at least want to tune in and see what somebody has to say, especially me. So
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. And
yeah,
I've got a bunch more questions. I'd written loads, and then I was messing around with the computer, and I yanked out the power cord, and then I had to rewrite all of them again from memory. So I hope I've
yeah.
got all the ones in that I wanted to. But the first basically page of questions I've got for you is all about modern wrestling, what's going on today, and I'd like to get your opinions on that. And I
Sure.
suppose the first thing I'm going to ask you is every other day somebody is being announced as all elite. In other words, AEW is hiring somebody else, and it generally seems to be somebody who had one match on AEW Dark, and Tony Khan liked them too much. They have 3 hours of first run programming every week, not discounting the YouTube show. Why do they need 90 men and 23 women on their roster?
I can only speculate, and this is just my opinion. It I don't know Tony Khan. I know a lot of the guys who were there, or some of the guys who were there: Billy Gunn, Arn Anderson, Dean Malenko, whoever the agents are. But as far as talent goes, it looks or it appears to me at first glance that Tony Khan is taking guys to show that he's going to have a roster of younger guys. It seems like that could develop into something else, and more power to him. Once again, it's another place to work. It's got national TV coverage, and that's a blessing and a curse if you have guys on there who aren't ready to go. The problem is you do talent is what is the lifeblood of the business. Talent, young talent, interesting talent uh, is what your program should be about. And Tony Khan, I believe, is trying to get the best young, fresh, immature talent he can to come on board and mature in his company, learn his company's ways, and hopefully make AEW more appealing company to come to with the schedule, with the work ethic. So why do they need 90? Maybe just so WWE can't get them. I don't know. That could be the game they're playing. I see the snips and the bar back and forth on the internet. It's amusing, but honest to goodness, the era, the culture of today has changed from when I broke in. And wrestling was the hottest in recent memory when Austin, Rock, Hunter, Shawn, Mankind, and all those guys were in the game and making it what it was with Undertaker, Kane. Let me go on and on and on. But um, the attitudes changed, the culture, the world. We have cancel culture. We can't do a lot of things that we did back in the Austin days, drinking beer, oh hell yeah, and cussing and swerving and all that stuff. So Tony Khan, obviously, he's got to have a plan or got to have an idea in his head with a young guy who can go out and perform and do things he likes. He'll want to hire him for his company. So I don't know specifically why they would need 90 guys or 100 guys on their roster necessarily, but from what I see, Tony wants to make it where it's a fun place to be. And that's the only thing I can surmise out of it.
There's an old, I don't know if it's an old saying, or it's sort of like an old theory of the wider the spotlight, the sort of less dense the light, the less people in the spotlight that you take notice of at the same time. I suppose I'm probably saying that the wrong way, but you know what I'm getting at. But I also juxtapose when you were in the territory days. I mean, some territories seem to be touring with like 12 guys on the roster at the same time.
Yeah, but once again, it was a different world, different business, because that's all you really needed. You were going to the same places every single week, and if you got hurt, you didn't get paid, and if you got hurt, you had to bring somebody in or somebody to take your place. You had 6 matches, sometimes 7 or 8 matches on the card, and yeah, you had your main event guys, you had your in between guys, and your underneath guys, and these days. You have live cable TV. Back then, it was just a regional TV. Some were live, some were taped. But uh, these days, the attention for or something to grab your attention is out there everywhere you turn. Video games. Nobody watches TV anymore. Old people watch TV. Everybody else watches their devices, their phones, their pads, their whatever it may be. So in that sense, the territory days was a lot simpler. It was the Outlaws. It was the Wild Wild West, and back then we called independent Outlaws. They were outlaw promotions. But the thing is, you have to have something on mainstream cable, whatever it may be, or mainstream streaming services with main event guys or interesting people, the guys who are your money makers and the guys who are going to draw people and eyeballs to your product. And I think having an overabundance of talent, the problem is you're trying to grab this guy and make him this. You're trying to grab that guy and make him that. And if they're not this or that, it's not going to work. It's not going to be authentic. It's not going to be real, and people aren't going to care. One of the analogies, real quick, not to go down a rabbit hole, but I talked about with someone the other day about a band. Who are the most popular bands these days? And he said to me, there's no bands out there. There's not as many bands as there used to be. Like in the days of Van Halen, Aerosmith, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, whatever you want to mention, man. I mean, Led Zeppelin. I'm talking classic rock and roll. Yes, but there hasn't been anybody that beat him out of the water yet. So Green Day was another one. It's the same thing. The country, the culture's moved on to something else. Now it's individuals. Now it's okay to be this and it's okay to be that. As long as you have your tribe who likes this and your tribe who likes that. And can they come together? I don't know. But back then you had people come together because you had a wrestler like a Johnny Valentine. Let me just say, for all the old school guys, Johnny Valentine could be the roughest, toughest, hated, most disgusting heel one week. But man, if he went against a heel who was even more vile and disgusting than he was, the fans would cheer him and they would get behind him. It's not because they were pro Valentine. It was that they were anti-Stasiak. And I use that because Johnny Valentine and Crusher Stasiak, Stan the Man Stasiak, had this incredible match in Houston. And I'll never forget, they hated Valentine. The fans hated Valentine, but they hated Stasiak worse. So it just forced this issue. It was a personal issue. And they went about it, in a manner that you could at least buy into. They all might have known it was a work and thought it was a work, but they paid money to come out and see it because they knew it was going to be two gladiators in the ring, constructing this match and going out there and giving fans more action than they could get at a football game or a racetrack or wherever you may be. And these days, it seems that you need more people to appeal to everybody, our multicultural globalization that we find ourselves in today. So if this doesn't appeal to you, wait, we got another one over here. Maybe this will appeal to you. Oh, you don't like that? Well, we got this guy. We got this girl. That's good. But at the same time, you're right. When the spotlight is, you have to pull it out, and it gets wider. It gets duller at the same time too. So, I don't know if that answers your question at all, but I will rant. It's not a problem there.
Well, I'll tell you what, then I'll give you another one. And I do a weekly show with Don Morocco, and occasionally I will ask him what does he think about modern wrestling, and he does keep watching here and there. And one thing he always focuses on is Bobby Lashley. When he was champion, he thought Bobby Lashley was fantastic. You know, he looked like $1 million, obviously. Still does, and he's in his mid-40s, looks amazing physically, and he's improved hugely in the ring, a really credible world champion. But his argument is that he was booked very badly as champion because he was on television wrestling for free every single week. Whereas in the old days, unless it was Saturday night's main event, Hulk Hogan never wrestled on it. 3 times maybe in 10 years until he went to WCW.
I'll agree with that, but what are you going to do when you have the world champion and you really are a television company at this point? You're an entertainment company. WWE has more invested with the television deals and these other deals they've been making. It's not a wrestling company anymore. When Don was there and Hogan was there, it was the World Wrestling Federation. All of a sudden, then it became World Wrestling Entertainment. And I don't know if this is true or not, but I had heard the rumor years ago that Vince, if Vince could get wrestling out of the title of the company, he would. But I that's just a rumor, and I've never heard that from Vince's mouth. But the point is, you have to come to the realization with 3 hours on Monday, 2 hours on Friday, and your house shows in between. It really isn't. The TV deals are generating the revenue, and it's the media outlets that WWE lends itself to, whether it's movies or other shows or on the internet, whatever it may be. That's their goal. That's their purpose. And the world champion can't be sitting on the sidelines every week when they have a pay-per-view every month, because he's part of the integral part of the main event, integral part of the wheel. And when it starts turning, it doesn't stop. They just, if you're hurt, they got to take you out and put somebody else in real quick. And that's what they're looking for. How do you replace Bobby Lashley? Well, I don't know. How do you replace Roman Reigns? I don't know if you can. But that's what's on their back. They have to draw, and they have to be on TV. It's just, again, the model has changed. Hogan didn't have to be on TV because they didn't have Raw during that time. Did they?
93 was Raw. For his main
First
title
Raw,
runs, we're talking 83 to 92, really.
Yeah, because 93 was when Raw started, I believe.
Yeah.
So they had Superstars, and they had all the syndicated stuff, and it was getting on cable, and they were having it on Saturday afternoon, Saturday mornings, had the cartoon shows. I mean, think about all the stuff they had back then too. The cartoon shows, the Wrestle Buddies, the dolls, or action figures, pardon me. Dolls. But the point is, it's not viable. You can't have the world champion off TV if it's a TV company, and it really is a TV company. It's a media company these days.
Do you know what? I get so much grief every single time I call them a doll. And I only found out recently that action figure, I think, was coined by the people who made G.I. Joe to make it more masculine.
Right.
So,
right. Boys don't play with. Well, wait a minute. Boys didn't play with dolls, but it's okay to play with dolls today. It's okay. It was okay to play with dolls back then, man. It was, but nobody made a deal of it. Nobody really made a deal of it, man.
Hey, which president was it who? Oh, damn it! There's a really old photo of him as a baby, and he's in a dress because it just doesn't seem. It just didn't matter whatever clothes fit you wore in those days.
I don't know. I'm sure there were a lot of presidents who wore dresses. We just don't know about them, and probably wasn't when they were babies either. So I mean, we don't know what goes on.
Oh no, I'm sure it would have been a personal choice with them. Ultimately, and this is going to be a giant question. If you could pick, and I'm going to go ask the same for WWE as well, but with AEW, ultimately, what do you think they're doing right? What do you think they could improve on? And if you could make 3 changes only to their product, either on television or behind the scenes, or who was on top or whatever, what 3 changes would you make to, have a more sustainable viewership?
Man, I got to tell you, I really don't know enough about what needs to be changed, obviously. And I know you're just asking for my opinion, but I didn't give TNA a chance in hell when they started. They were doing shows at the Nashville Fairgrounds, and man, it was not it for a wrestling fan. It looked great. For a wrestling fan, you appreciated the ambiance, but for a casual fan and for someone who was looking for big time entertainment, it wasn't. Um, AEW is doing the right things, I believe, in going to these arenas and the Arthur Ashe tennis facility and having 20,000 fans and doing these numbers. Which number? Let me address that first. I think when you're drawing fans, 20,000, 15,000, 10,000, you're doing pretty good these days. It's when you're drawing the hundreds or the teens, that you might want to look and go, wait a minute, do I really want to do this and why? But they're doing that. At least they're getting their product out. You have kids today. When I say kids, anywhere from 15 to 25, watching. In JPWA, we have guys coming wearing AEW shirts, Orange Cassidy shirts. That's the viewing audience. That's your market, and that's what you want to play to. So I can't. It's not my cup of tea. It's not something I would definitely, if I saw it, I think growing up as a kid, it wouldn't make me want to be a wrestler. But I came up in a different era. Again, I have to classify and clarify that because the world today is filled with so many distractions, so many opportunities and different ways to spread your attention, if you will. Cody Rhodes, for everything he does wrong, he does a lot of things right in the entertainment business because not everybody's going to like you. In fact, if you don't have haters in the entertainment business, you're doing something wrong. You need rivals and you need people because at least you're getting the attention. Brandy the same way. However annoyingly arrogant and egotistical she may or may not be. Same thing for Cody. This is a business. You better be sure of yourself and you better have confidence. And there's a fine line between confidence and cockiness. And sometimes you have to cross the line and blur the line. And I think they're doing those things right. I think that even the guys who get heat with people who are hardcore wrestling fans or experts and say, oh, man, I can't stand that guy. Oh, God, they're going out there and just doing spot. All right. For a purist and for a coach or somebody looking at what you need to do correctly to have the basics and fundamentals, it doesn't matter. Once you get on TV, once you have a spot or once you have a job, you do what your company wants you to do. And if they ask you to do something, it's up to you to interpret it and make it and better and create it, and give you an idea, give you a suggestion. But then you take it and you color in between the lines or color outside the lines or color it all messy as you want, as long as it's entertaining and it gets eyeballs on the product. I think that's really the end goal, is to have people watching your show, getting invested, buying your merchandise, and buying the guys that you're putting on there so they want to watch the pay-per-views. Daniel Bryan, CM Punk, no matter who else they bring, they're going to get those guys in the company, and maybe they'll make a change, maybe they won't. But I've also seen, read a couple of the articles that the numbers really haven't moved. I mean, they got a spike when Punk came. I think there was a spike when Bryan came, but it's kind of leveled out. So there's no pop, there's no uprise. I mean, and it takes time to do that. So we're at that holding pattern right now, I believe. And what I don't know the three things I would definitely change, if anything at all, because I really don't know whose mind is behind this madness. But they obviously have people who enjoy watching the Young Bucks. They enjoy watching their attitude and their cockiness and their brashness on All Elite, their video gimmick on YouTube. Okay, so who's to say who's wrong and who's to say who's right? If you got an audience over here watching this, great. What are you going to do to steal that audience? Because you're doing something completely different on this side, but they're watching the dog and pony show over here. Whatever you want to call it, some of those guys are not ready for prime time. But you can't wait until someone's ready. A lot of times you have to say, look, you got to go. You're either ready or you're not. You're never going to be always perfectly in tune. And now I can do it. I got it. No. There's got to be some imperfections. Got to be some dirt under your fingernails. There's got to be some grit and grime to it so it looks authentic. And some of those guys are trying to play like they're the real deal and trying to play like they're these characters they portray. It can't. I'm not saying it can't work, but it can't work like that if you're not feeling it. And a lot of those guys, I can tell when they go out there, they're not feeling it. On the other side, with WWE, it's the same thing. They're looking for the next group of guys under, in their 20s, or in their 20s, early 30s, ready to go out and have that enthusiasm, have that fire. You haven't done it yet. And when you go out there, you'll know if you can or you can't. You know if you should or you shouldn't. And that's the instinct part. So AEW, with all their faults, they have a lot of good things going on too. And the thing is, I've talked to more people who enjoy watching Orange Cassidy with his hands in his pockets, keeping up and doing this stuff, to which I didn't get G.G. Allen in the beginning either. But you had an audience for that too. You follow me? I mean, I would rather go to an Aerosmith concert or something like that than G.G. Allen. But it's the same thing. Do you want to have somebody throw shit at you while they're singing on stage, or do you want to have somebody actually perform and show you that they can do things the guy in the third row can't? You know what I mean? Steven Tyler's in his 70s. He's still keeping up on stage. He's rocking. He's rolling. I mean, there's secrets in the rock and roll world too, and I get that. It's all a work. It really, really is. But it's entertainment, from rock and roll to rodeoing to professional wrestling to sports entertainment. It really is a work. You're paying your money to go see someone perform, and you got to go see somebody that you really enjoy to get your money's worth, I think. So Cody Rhodes, I think, tremendous athlete. I like John Moxley. I really, really do. I think John's a hell of a performer. And Dustin, for Dustin to still be out there doing it, and at the level he's doing it, he still has passion, and you can feel that. I can feel it when I watch Dustin work. So I wish I had an answer for the three things I would change, but I really, really don't, because I haven't seen a whole lot of AEW. What I've seen, I'm not a big fan of the Dark Order. I can appreciate their passion. I can appreciate guys wanting to do this, and I can appreciate having friends who now have a company and can allow you to do it. But at the same time, friends shouldn't let friends wrestle when they don't know what they're doing. So that's my point.
Do you know, I was more stunned that you brought up G.G. Allen as an analogy. He must be the
everybody knows G.G., don't they?
Oh my God, okay. G.G. Allen. Oh, jeez, I've actually seen footage of those. Oh my God, like the FMW of rock and roll or something like that, I'd suggest.
But that's how I compare it. Somebody told me one time, real quick. They asked me about whatever it was, and I said, you know what? I get it, man. Some people want to go see G.G., some people want to go see Aerosmith. And he looked at me and said, oh, okay. And I compared it. That's what I mean. G.G. Allen had his followers. He had his cult, and they made a movie about him. I've seen the other films and the other stuff, the bootleg stuff, because I have those kind of friends. And then I watched it and I said, you know, I get it. He's expressive. He's hardcore. He doesn't care what anybody thinks. He's in your face. And he's throwing shit at you on stage, and he can't sing, but he rocks and gets attention. You know, then you got Aerosmith again, who goes out and they actually can play their instruments. They actually can hear, you understand, not always understand the words, but they give you a show. They give you a rap. They give you entertainment. They go out and it's a positive vibe. It's a great high energy vibe. And G.G. is the dark club with a guy doing what he does. And that's what I compared the two to.
Well, I know which one I'd rather have the gate receipt proceeds from. I'll tell you that. I'll tell
Yeah.
you. I'm gonna give you sort of like a three-pronged question actually, because as a stalwart of the territories from '79 to whenever the territory sort of went away, you'll be able to answer this. Compare it to the old days and the new days again. There's rumors of The Rock either facing Roman Reigns at this upcoming WrestleMania or the next WrestleMania schedule. You will dictate, and Dwayne's health as well. I suppose three questions really. When did WWE start over relying on old wrestling draws to bolster their WrestleManias or another big show? And also, and there was a third question somewhere, but also, how did in the territory days did they deal with legends without overshadowing their incumbent main eventers?
Well, let me answer the second one first. In the territory days, your main eventers and legends were either coming to the territory to work a time, to work 3 months, 6 months, or a year, or whatever. Sometimes they didn't have a time frame. They just say, "Well, come in, we'll use you until we can't, then we'll find somebody else or someplace else for you to go." The legendary guys like today weren't didn't exist. Again, it was a different market, different era, different setup. Didn't have the internet, didn't have cable. So you had guys, the traveling stars like the Andre the Giants, the world champion, and Dusty Rhodes, and things like that. Those were the legends who would go from territory to territory and make it special. Like they would bring in Andre as a special attraction. They would bring in the world champion's going to face your top baby face and make him better and stronger when he leaves. So that was how it was handled back then, and it was a different system. Now the guys are called superstars, and the guys are when you say relying on the old guys, you really have to ask yourself. I don't know that they're relying on them, but why do they have to call these other guys in? Why is it that you have legends that everybody still remembers fondly, wants to see, um, like The Rock? Who else can you put in that category? You don't have another one of Roman Reigns' cousins or relatives that you can put in there and make it mean as much. The Rock is one of the, if not the most globally recognized names, personas on the planet. So if you don't have a Hulk Hogan on your roster, then get Hulk Hogan if you can. Teddy Long told me something one time at a convention. Teddy Long looks fantastic. He stays in shape. And he said, when I come to these things, they want Teddy Long, and I got to be in shape. So I asked him about doing the treadmill, because he does the treadmill 1 hour every single day. He's amazing. And he said this is what they want to see. They want to see Teddy Long. They don't want to see a big, fat, out of shape. Who's that guy, Teddy Long? And The Rock is in shape. Lesnar's in shape. The guys they need to call are filling that spot because they have no one else of that stature, of that name value. And is it the fault of the company? Well, I don't know, because I'm not there. I can honestly say you have to be put in that position, but you have to earn the trust of the people who are going to put you there. And they got to know that you're reliable. They got to know that you're going to be there, that they can count on you. So I think that has a lot to do with it. The guys today are doing what they can, no doubt. And they're doing what they believe in their heart they need to do, no doubt. But you got to think, in the days of the Attitude Era, and in the days when you had your Razor Ramon, Shawn Michaels, and Kevin Nash's, they were pushing the envelope backstage too. They were making their own world, and anybody else who wanted to join in was had the door slammed in their face, so to speak. So they were ruthless in their desire for power, in their desire for greatness, and their drive. They had the drive. They had the the gumption, they had the gravitas to go in and tell Vince what they wanted, and got it because they said it with conviction and confidence and believed it. Nowadays, a lot of people are saying, yes, sir. No. Oh, sure. Of course. We'll take this. And I've done it myself. We said, oh, Christ, we have no other angle. We have no other option. Okay, we'll do it. And whereas if you went to a guy like Shawn Michaels, he didn't like it, say, hell no, I'm not doing that. And he'd have an idea. Same thing with Austin. If he didn't like the idea given to him, he would come up with something else. These days, I don't know if that's the case, that the guys are accepting everything's given to them. I certainly know that they're given scripts to read for promos, and that's not the way, in my opinion. If you can't read a script and be sincere, if you can't make it come from your heart and materialize what really you're feeling, get that point on paper across in your emotion and where people actually believe it, that's a big obstacle to hurdle. And a lot of guys can't do it. Some guys can't, but you have to get comfortable speaking in front of people, speaking into the camera, and being sincere and being at least where people care and are interested in what you're saying. If you just get up here and say a bunch of words, it means nothing. And that's what's going on today, I think. In the territory days, to go back to that, it was all, you had your bullet points. This is who you're working with next week. This is the match. This is what we want you to hit. You say it however you want to say it. And most of the great promo guys always had a story to tell, and it intertwined with what was going on in the. And also, it was authentic. It sounded like something they would say. Terry Funk wouldn't say something superstar Billy Graham would say, but Terry would say something just as interesting in a different way, in a different voice, with different words. And they were both iconic in their promos. So that's what I think is a huge reason why they're getting some of the legends and some of the guys from the old days, because that's what they were brought up on, the territory days. Rock was brought up. He saw his dad in the territory days. He saw the territories. He saw the old time heels. He felt the old time spectacle of it all. And he knows what the spectacle is. People want to come and see a spectacle. They want to see a show. They want to see lights, cameras, action, lions, tigers, bears. We can see cats and dogs all day. We want to see extraordinary. We want to see larger than life. We know we're all human. We know we're all the same, but we're really not, because some of us think differently. Some of us do different things. Some of us do like crazy, crazy stuff. And they don't have the mystery anymore. A lot of the guys out there are doing social media. A lot of the younger guys especially want to tell everybody every little thing about them, every little detail of their life. And they don't care anymore because you're not mysterious. You're not this guy they look at and go, I wonder what he's like behind closed doors or behind the makeup. Darby Allin's a perfect example. He came up with a story. And he told me, man, he came to a seminar. I just got to say this. Don't care how it sounds, but this is what Darby told me. I saw him at a convention in Indianapolis, and he says, man, I just want you to know, when I did the seminar in St. Louis, I did a seminar for Harley Race. It was in St. Louis, around St. Louis. And he had told me about this gimmick. And I thought, well, I don't know if it'd work or not, but you got to find somebody who let you try it. And years later, of course, he did. And he said, when I heard your story at the seminar, it made me think, I got to have a story. I got to have a backstory. Why do I paint my face half this way and have not? Do you know the story?
I don't know. No.
Well, he was in a car wreck, and I think it was his whoever relative died in the car wreck. And this is for this and this is for that, because he felt so bad about, this died and this stayed alive, and I'm torn between it. I have this guilt. Now, that didn't really happen, but that's a story. You know what I mean? And I said, I don't remember the story I told. And I told a story about my mom when we were growing up. And I do this in all seminars. Talking about promos and how you're telling it. She had a rose bush by her house, and these dogs kept eating her flowers. There were 3 dogs. And she told me one day, Tom, I need you to take care of these dogs. I don't want them eating my flowers anymore. I don't care what you do, but I don't want to see these dogs around our house anymore. And I knew if I didn't do it, my mom was going to beat the living hell out of me. I knew it. That's just the way I grew up. And so I took these 3 dogs, and I had a big bag, and I they weren't big dogs. I put them all 3 in the bag with a big rock, and I dropped it in the middle of this. It was like a little river, and it went straight to the bottom. I never saw them again. And they were aghast, and they looked at me and went, oh, and I went, guys, that didn't happen. It's a promo, it's a story, but I want you to believe it happened. Because they all looked at me like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? I said, no, exactly. That's what you want to do. Is like, what the hell? It's storytelling. And that's what wrestling is. You have to have a story. Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. I mean, there's times when, yes, you have to tell the truth, but there's times you have to have a bit of truth into it and then color up with chocolate milk or whatever you want to mix it with so it goes down smooth, man. And sometimes it doesn't have to go down smooth. Sometimes it has to get caught in your throat. And you go, oh, my God, did you do that? I can't believe that. And that's what you want. It's those different emotions. And a lot of people these days have listened to that, but they don't know how to bring that out of themselves. They got entranced by the stories, and they were listening to these enchanted words in this colorful world they lived in. And when Dusty Rhodes would say it, or superstar Billy Graham would say it, you would look at these 2 characters and you would say, I believe it, because those are where those guys belong. They don't live on Earth with the rest of us. They get in their spaceship and go somewhere else after the matches. I mean, they're not regular people. They're not normal human beings. And that's why when I got into wrestling, that's what attracted me. These guys were not normal human beings. They were out on the road in a different town every night. Sometimes it was a little horrible arena like the Sportatorium or something like that was just dark and damp and hot in the summertime, cold in the wintertime. But oh my God, what an atmosphere for wrestling. What an atmosphere for these 2 behemoths to come out, and you would see the sweat fly, and you see these guys hit each other, and you would see the moves, and you would wonder. Everybody would tell you it's all fake. Come on, this isn't real. But then you would look at it and you say, how in the hell is this fake? They hooked me. But that was because these guys never broke character. They never broke the 4th wall. They never acted like, oh, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Hey, what we're doing is really fun. We're just having fun with our friends. It's not what it was. Even though they were having fun with their friends, there was something called kayfabe that everybody adhered to, and that doesn't exist anymore. I know it's a different. Again, I keep going back to this because I want everyone to understand. I'm not saying I wish it could be like it was in the old days, although I wish it could be like it was in the old days. But it's impossible. We have to move on. We can't stay stagnant. We can't live in the past. I love wrestling the way it was, but I also love the ambition. I love the ingenuity. I love the intrigue at times when wrestling's done right these days. When you have a Paul Heyman cut a promo, when you have a Roman Reigns go out there and the bloodline and the head of the table and things like that, that's authentic. That's real. That's him. That's him with the volume turned up. He is such a great person. He's such a great athlete, such a great overall human being, Roman Reigns. But he knows how to be what he needs to be. He is a badass, a legitimate badass. He's one of those silent but deadly badasses. Don't let him get silent. He will warn you. He'll say, hey, man, I think I've had enough. Now you need to stop. He's one of those guys. All right, I've already told you once, this is it. And he's one of those guys that once you cross the line, there's no return. That's authentic. That's him. I mean, in behind the scenes. But when he needs to pull up his badass card on screen, he has no problem doing it. And Paul Heyman is just an accent on everything he does because Paul Heyman is so, again, that's Paul. That's Paul being Paul. There's no act. There's no pretense. That is just Paul going out and talking his talk. Whatever he does, that's what he does. And that's what all those guys do. And that's why it's so far hard to find somebody today, because the younger guys have watched all that growing up, and now they're going to try and duplicate that or imitate that when they need to concentrate on, yes, duplicate the element they're using, which is authenticity and gravitas and realism, but they have to do it with gravitas and realism, and they've got to feel it. It's got to come from inside. If it doesn't, it's going to be just rehashed words, and you're just saying the lines, and it means nothing.
As I believe Johnny Valentine's already mentioned, what did he always used to say? I can't make you believe that wrestling is real. You can finish it off.
Well, but I can damn sure make you believe in me, and he would. And one of the greatest compliments, man, I got from Johnny Valentine. I worked a town with him, and went. Larry Lane and I wrestled 15 minutes in the match. He came back and said, "Good match, guys." And I thought, for Valentine, because I grew up watching this guy, and Larry hit me. I hit him back hard, but it was in safe places. And I thought, my God, this is one of the coolest things, because Johnny Valentine, there was always an element of doubt with him. He had these cold blue eyes that would stare a hole through anybody, and he was a dangerous guy. This is the part that a lot of guys are missing out on. They don't study the history of the business and study about the guys, what they were really like behind the scenes, out on the road, traveling in some way. Have you heard any Johnny Valentine stories, by the way?
I've heard a few, yes.
Okay, so have you heard the one about Buddy Rogers, or the Jay York and the asthma?
No, absolutely not. I've never heard that one.
Well, I'm not condoning this. I'm just saying this is an insight into Johnny Valentine. And when I heard this, I thought, man, this is it's not going to put. Well, okay, look. So here's the deal. The guys ribbed pretty heavy back then, but it was on the road. Again, it was different lifestyle, different world. The Wild Wild West. And these guys were pretty rugged. They're going from town to town. And when Undertaker said in his Joe Rogan promo about when he broke in, guys had guns in their bags and knives, stuff like that. That was to protect them from the fans back then, because the fans back then, there was real heat. They would slash the tires, break the cars, break the windows in the cars of the heels, do what they could do to destroy property. So these guys sometimes had to either, just with the threat of showing a gun, the fans would scatter. But a lot of these fans had guns too, in Texas, in Tennessee, in the South. These were some pretty tough people. And that's what Taker was talking about. That was the business when we broke in. And Valentine, getting back to that story, Jay York had a asthma inhaler. Yes. Valentine took out the asthma inhaler and put lighter fluid in it. Jay comes back from a match, goes for his asthma inhaler, goes to take a whiff, take a hit, chokes, and Valentine thinks that's the funniest thing in the world. Jay gets his gun out of his back, shoots Buddy Rogers' Halliburton. It hits Buddy's Halliburton, and it's loud in the dressing room, as you can imagine. And as the story goes, obviously I wasn't there, but this is an old-time story. This is legendary. But anyway, Jay said the next one's going right in you, and he was pissed. But Valentine was a dangerous guy. Valentine was that guy that the boys knew. He was tough, and you'd make money with him, and he was who he was, but you didn't know about behind the scenes like that unless you were there, unless you knew and were part of it. And I always tell the guys, you can find out about some of the guys, like a Dr. Jerry Graham, like a Boris Malenko, like Adrian Adonis. These guys were not normal people. They weren't. They were not what you would call normal people. But neither was Jeffrey Dahmer, and he wasn't famous either. Okay? So my point is, you find out about these guys, and do you ingrain it? Do you bring it into you? Do you let it absorb in your body? Austin was watching Richard Kaczynski, a serial murderer. He was watching the documentary. When Jeannie said, "Don't let your tea get stone cold," if without that moment, we don't know. Would it have been stone cold? Would it have been Chili McFreeze? Whatever it is, those are the moments that you have to be open for, and you can't be looking for them all the time, but you got to be ready when they hit you. And Steve was watching the movie, the documentary, and all of a sudden he's listening to what this guy did. How can I bring that into my character? How can I be a little more cold-blooded? How can I come across with this? God, I'm just not catching it. Steve, drink your tea before I get stone cold. God almighty. What'd you say? So I mean, and a lot of people don't get that. And you need someone to oftentimes come to you and say, why do you want to be the murderer Mac McMurray? Or why do you want to be the crippler Chris Kringle? I mean, does it work? Are you really a crippler? What makes you a crippler? Killer Kowalski became Killer Kowalski when he clumsily, accidentally came off the top rope with the knee drop on Yukon Eric, and his ear came off. And his ear is on the ring, laying there on the ring. And Walter's going, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And Yukon Eric, I think it was. Actually, the story goes, again, I wasn't there, obviously. The story goes, don't worry, kid, we'll make a lot of money with this. That way, his ear is laying on the mat. People are aghast. People are freaking out, and they're in the ring. Walter's he's apologizing, and Eric is going, no, we're going to make some money off this kid. Don't worry, it's all good. Okay, so they're not normal people. He became Killer Kowalski after that, and he used it his whole career. One of the nicest men ever in the business. Just a great man. So if you study the history of some of these guys, learn the background, even the fictitious background, then you get to the real stuff, and then you learn, how do you find that? You investigate. You have to talk to people. You got to get in there, and a lot of guys just don't do it these days, I don't think. And then you can learn so much from the past, not just from wrestlers. I mean, look at some of the people who've come down the pike, from musicians, rock and rollers, any entertainer. Just look at them and see what idiosyncrasies they have. See if you can identify. See if you can make it your own. Because not everybody knows about everybody. Not everybody knows about G.G. Allen. And there's some idiosyncrasies he had that I hope nobody acquires. But Johnny Valentine had some of those that G.G. had, which again is interesting in itself. And you're going, this guy was a main eventer everywhere he went, and he wanted to do this. So and it not only does it make you question, but it makes you wonder, how did that apply when they came to the ring? What was going on in their head, once the match was over? So anyway, those are things that everybody needs to think about, and they don't a lot of times.
Well, this next question actually sort of leads on to what you're talking about, Johnny Valentine, and believing that you're real and stuff. Actually, it sort of doesn't, but this is actually teaching young people how to get into the business and don't do any mistakes. But do you see any big time professionals, big time names that have been in the ring for years, been on television for years, and they still do things that really bug you as a trainer?
Man, I don't know if there's anybody in particular. I really don't. But sometimes when here's a pet peeve, and I can't point to anybody specifically, but when you just haphazardly grab a hold or haphazardly throw a strike, a forearm, a kick, whatever it is. If you're a pro, you've been in it for a while, and you've had any kind of TV experience, you should know. Jake Roberts, to me, was one of the greatest guys in that sense, because Jake understood, even when he walked in the building, he walked in with the idea that all eyes were on him. And a lot of times they were. So you have to have that sensibility when you first get there. You have to have that sensibility when you're out in public, that all eyes are on you. Don't worry about when you meet somebody, if they like you. Worry about if you're going to like them, and it brings a whole different attitude to it. It really does. I mean, you have that confidence, like, hey, how are you doing? Nice to meet you. And Donald Trump doesn't like to shake hands, but you force his hand, shaking, and go, yeah, good. He may hate you, but you don't care. It doesn't matter. Do I like him? And then it becomes a different game. But I think finishing a hold is one of my pet peeves. Can't finish a hold where It's solid and it at least looks somewhat authentic. That bugs me a lot when somebody tries to this. Most of the experienced guys don't do this, but I've still seen some experienced guys do this. Get the crowd going. Come on, let's clap, guys. Come on. You've done nothing to earn that. You've done nothing. You got to clap. No, those are just some of the pet peeves. As far as experienced guys that I've seen over the years, there's nothing that really stands out. There are some things I see and I go, but I do know it's modern wrestling. I do know that 14 super kicks are required now as opposed to one, because one just can't get the job done. Shawn Michaels could get it done, but and Chris Adams could get it done, but these guys today need at least 14.
One thing that I've started to notice in the last few years when I look at whenever I'm looking is how many steps it takes somebody to get across the ring. And as a trainer, you must have noticed this, when people start out, they don't hit the ropes that hard, and then they take 17 steps, to go across the ring. And then, I mean, what's the ideal, and who are the best at running the ropes?
Well, you have different size rings too. WWE's 20 by 20, then you got your 18, then you have your 16, and you've ever been in a 14-foot ring, you can't move. But there's I've worked in a 22 by 22 ring in Los Angeles, and so you have to. Not everybody has the same size legs, or some are longer, some are bigger. So taller guys, it'll take less steps to get across the ring, but you've got to slow down. You can't run like do the little pitter patter. I see pitter patter all the time, and I tell them take bigger steps. Take less steps, but don't haul ass right off the bat. Take your time to figure out how many steps it gets across the ring. And then when you slow down, you can do that. It is a work. It's timing. It's pacing. It's placement. Everything we do means something in the ring. And a lot of people don't get that. There is a method to hitting the ropes, taking a certain amount of steps. I think it takes me 5 steps to get across the ring, because we did it last week. And the same person taller than me is going to take maybe 4. And after that, the next person may need 6. But you don't do the pitter patter. You need to have longer strides. And there's a method to that. And it comes down to timing and just relax. The hardest thing to do is relax. It really, really is.
Right, I'm going to do a little game with you now. It's a pretty basic one. It's going to be bests and worsts. You can elaborate if you wish, or we can move straight into the next one. It's entirely up to you. I'm going to give you a list of, tell me what the best of one example and the worst, and you know how it's going to work. And the best and worst Giants other than Andre the Giant.
The best and worst other than Andre?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to have to say during my time, and I'll stick to my time, then I'll bring you up to the modern time. Ernie Ladd was, good gosh, 7 foot, I think, legit, or at least 6'9", and he was as tall as Andre. So, that was the hype. That was great, but Andre had looked, obviously, you could say 7'4", and people go, oh my God, because nobody's going to go up to Andre and say, hey, let me got a tape measure here, Andre. Can we measure you? So everybody would accept. But I think Ernie Ladd was one of the great Giants, and I don't think he was underrated. They rated Ernie pretty damn high everywhere he went. And he was impressive. I think, obviously, and I hate to pick on him, but El Gigante was not the best Giant in the world, obviously. Kevin Nash was a pretty good Giant. It doesn't matter what we do in the ring all the time, obviously. Kevin was great on promos. Kevin had a great presence. Kevin was personable. He made you watch whatever he did, you wanted to see what he was capable of doing. So I think Ernie Ladd and Kevin Nash were certainly 2 of my favorites. Uncle Elmer, the big Stan Frazier guy, they put him in a Lone Ranger mask in Memphis, so they couldn't recognize him. So, but he was a nice guy. He just was a big old fella that was big and didn't know his own strength sometimes. And but he wasn't. I don't know that he was very entertaining in the ring as the Giant Hillbilly or the Lone Ranger. So they made him a hillbilly in WWE, let him get married, and all that good stuff. But I didn't think he was one of the better ones. So I'd go with Ernie Ladd and Kevin as 2 of the best ones. And Uncle Elmer and El Gigante, El Gigante, as two of my not so favorites.
Did you ever see Silo Sam?
Oh my God, in Dallas.
Yes.
Well, not live. I saw him on some tape. Yeah, I saw him on some YouTube
Probably could have
stuff. I
seen him
sure
from
did.
space.
Well, I don't know. I've been in space a few times. I can see him. But the thing is, back in those days, if you looked up the part, I just saw a real quick thing on Lance Von Erich the other day, the way he was discovered. David Manning came up to him on the golf course. What? So, I mean, but that would happen back then. They would see somebody who looked good and approach him and say, hey, man, you ever thought about wrestling? Sometimes they look and say, get out of my face, or, well, maybe. So, if you saw a big guy, you can't teach 6'9", you can't teach 6'4", 6'5". If you can get him in there and he has an aptitude for it, well, man, you never know. And that's kind of how it was back then. In the Wild West days, you took a chance, brought him down to the sportatorium and saw if he had any feel for this, or if you wanted to do this or not, see what you could get out of it. I think Silo Sam was one of those experiments.
I'd never forgive myself if I didn't ask you this as well. Did you ever go out drinking with Andre the Giant?
Yes, I did. When I first started in LA, especially, we'd go to Original Joe's in San Jose, right across from the arena, and he bought Crown Royals for everybody, 4 at a time, and pay for the steaks, pay for everything. I've been out with Andre a few times, yeah, and it was always a blur. A lot of fun, because there's always a crowd and always attention. But yeah, it was very much a mind eraser.
Yeah. Well, I take it if it's a mind eraser, you won't know maybe his record numbers that you saw him put down.
I've seen no. I wasn't counting at that time. I wasn't counting anything. I don't think any of us were. We just know there was never an empty glass. I mean, you finished one, you had another, and sometimes, my God, you look around and it was a sea of Crown Royal. So, yeah.
The very best tag team you ever wrestled?
Gosh, I got to put it with the Rock and Roll Express. They really are. I think Ricky and Robert probably. Ricky certainly is in the top 5 all-time babyface selling. I really do. But Rock and Roll was and what constitutes a great tag team for me, that we wrestled. We never got to work with the Road Warriors. We worked with Steiners. We worked with a few guys, but the Rock and Roll Express were had that fire, had that aura, had that vibe. Even when they got older, even in Smoky Mountain. And even today, they're in their 60s, and even today, I look at Ricky do these things, and he's not taking a whole lot of bumps, no doubt about it. But even do a Canadian Destroyer, even to try it, or even to do his Steiner roll,
Hurricanrana,
Frankenstein, have a Corona. Yeah, do his have a Corona. I still think that's great. Still think it's amazing. So Rock and Roll Express has to be my favorite.
Yeah, I won't ask you your worst on that one, but I will ask you your favourite and least favourite foreign country you wrestled in.
Man, well, we went to India once, and it wasn't that it was the least favorite at all. It was just the most eye-opening. Have you ever been to India?
I've never been to India, no. I've been to Egypt. That's the closest.
Oh, wow. See, I'd like to go to Egypt. That sounds like it would be really interesting. But India was interesting to me because you hear the stories before you get over there about people in the streets and cows walking down the streets and things like this. It actually did. But it was such I don't know this to be a fact, but where we were in the hotel, and it was like they had the fence around it and the barbed wire around it. And then we walked out to go down to a gym, which amounted to be in some basement, and just some really primitive barbells and dumbbells. It showed me how people were actually surviving in the streets, sitting under the bridges, on the bridges, sitting on the streets. It was just it was amazing the amount of poverty we saw. It wasn't least favorite country. It was just most, again, eye-opening, stunning, to where everybody who went to the bar that night, was drinking mixed drinks, had the ice in the water, got sick. Yeah, yeah. I drank beer that night, but I mean, you had bottled water. They said, close your eyes, close your mouths when you take a shower. That kind of stuff. That's pretty real and stunning at the same time when you go, oh my gosh, this really is true. This is a real deal here. People have to take into account. So I don't think I've ever been to really any country that I've said, I can't stand this place, can't wait to get out. Even Mexico has its charm and way about it that you go, man, nice place to visit. Wouldn't want to live here, but a nice place to visit because you get to see it in its element. I lived in El Paso. I was born in Texas. I've been to Mexico a few times, and some people like it, some people don't. But I like to experience different cultures. I like to see it up close. I like to see it and feel it and touch it and know. One of the places I always wanted to go is Japan. I got to go to Japan my first year in the business, and it was so cool. I always wanted to go to Australia and New Zealand. Haven't been there yet, but other countries it was so cool to know that this really is a culture. This really is done daily, and man, I'd like to see how it is. So for me, I'm trying to take this off.
Oh, well, while you're doing that, then I'll ask you, was that the same India trip where Gerald Briscoe puked up outside the bus?
Probably.
Yeah.
It might have been. I'd only been one, but that there was a few people that puked outside the bus, I think, that day. But yeah, I don't. It could have been. So, but once again, I don't have a. I sure don't have a country. It's not my favorite yet.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been to the Middle East. So I don't know.
No, me neither, and
Yeah.
I don't really wish to be. Do you know what? I probably will do at some point. I like to go to Oman or somewhere that just, that doesn't have a civil war going on at the moment, but also, isn't somewhere you'd usually visit. I mean, I want to get. I've got Mongolia on the list. I want to do the Trans-Mongolian Express going from Russia through Mongolia to China and stuff like that. So I've got a lot of plans, hopefully without the COVID getting in the way.
Well, certainly, and even I saw the Dark Side of the Ring where the guys went to was it China? It was China with Flair and Inoki, or was it Russia?
North Korea.
North Korea. Well, come on, Russia, North Korea, China, they're similar. No, they're not. Okay, but the point is, I mean, going to a place like North Korea and just experience that from that side of the line and going, wow, people are actually outside their door listening to every word you said. So it's just any place. I would love to see the world. I'd love to see what's out there because I believe that I'm not here for a long time. I'm here for a good time. So
definitely, I'm going to give you the next one then, and it's going to be a harder one, I suppose. Is the most underappreciated and the most overrated main event talent? It could either be in a territory or a national company.
Most underrated?
Most underrated or underappreciated, and most overrated.
Ah, man, you're right. That is, I think, well, there's a lot of underrated guys. I really do. I've seen underrated guys, but what constitutes being underrated? I mean, are you good enough to be in the main event, but something's holding you back, or you just don't have that next alphabet you need in line, whatever it is. We're going A, B, C, D, and you don't have E. You may have F, but you need that E to complete it. I don't know. I'm go, man. But Brad Armstrong was a main eventer at one time in his career. He was a main eventer, and he could have been a main eventer at any time during his career. What I feel held him back was his personality on camera, personality off stage, off in the back, unmatched, unbelievable. Was the guy who kept the whole rolling. He was the straw that stirred the drink. Without Brad, it was really a boring night. But you had guys like Lex Luger then, who, all due respect to Lex, all due respect, he worked his ass off. But I don't know that he was as good as he was highly touted as being. He learned later on, but during the time he was getting his major push, once again, I wasn't there for the WCW days. I was there for WWE days. I think Lex was in a different frame of mind. So he would be my overrated guy, but Brad Armstrong would be my highly underrated, I think, especially later on in his career guy.
Best and worst booker.
Oh man. Whoa. Well, once again, and that was one of the things I learned a long time ago when I was really finding out about the business side of things. I didn't want to hear about the business side of things, but the booker is the guy who decides these things. And if you don't get along with him, guess what? You're going to get the horrible bookings, and you're not going to get pushed, and you're not going to get all these things. Bill Dundee smarted me up to that. Bill Dundee was a great booker. I thought Bill Dundee did a great job in Mid-South when he took the Midnight and Rock and Roll Express, smaller guys from Memphis territory, into a big man's territory that guys said, there's no way you can succeed here. And he did record business. So I think Bill Dundee certainly, and Bill Watts has to be two of the top bookers in my point of view. Bad bookers, I don't necessarily know who I could even think about that.
Well, they didn't last anyway, did they? Bad bookers for the most part.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, I'll give you best and worst ring announcer.
Goodness, I love Don Owen. He was a great man. Henny did a lot for me. Don Owen did a lot for me too. He really did. But he was that old school guy who just goes, in this corner, ladies and gentlemen, Buddy Rose. And it wasn't, it fit that part, but it wasn't what you'd call, it wasn't Howard Finkel, that's for sure. Howard gets mentioned as one of the greatest ring announcers too, but I got to say Boyd Pierce in Texas and Louisiana was a tremendous ring announcer. He knew how to get the inflection in his voice, and they used to announce the times back then too. And Boyd would take, when 5 minutes is gone, Boyd would go 5 minutes, and he would let it go sometimes for a long time and pop the people. Sometimes he wouldn't, sometimes he'd do it straight, but he was entertaining. So I'm going to go out with Boyd Pierce and Howard Finkel. I'm going to pick two for the best.
Do you brought up Howard Finkel, and I always think he's like one of the most unsung probably heroes in the back. That as you said before, one of the straws that stirred the drink. More of Howard's backstage role, if you could elaborate on that.
He would hand out the travel package, booking sheets, things like that. But he would also just talk to the guys, whatever issue they needed. If they couldn't go to somebody or somebody else wasn't available, somebody would usually grab Howard, and he would do his best to help the boys. He loved the business. He was always joyful, always happy, and most of the time. I mean, I'm sure there were times when he had enough. But Howard, backstage, would talk to anybody. He was an encyclopedia about wrestling, and it was always good to talk to him about angles he wanted to ask about from different parts of the country, different parts of the world. He knew it all, and that was the cool thing about him, man. Backstage, I think it'd be safe to say everybody loved Howard.
Yeah. Was Howard just too nice for the wrestling business? Because I've heard many stories of basically, if you wanted to pick on someone, it was pick on Howard Day.
Yeah, I think so. He was. I think he was probably way too nice for the wrestling business, but I also think he wouldn't have wanted to do anything but. So he loved it.
Best and worst payoff man.
Ooh. Okay. Ooh. Well, the obvious best would be Vince, because that's just the place with the most money. And the worst, I would like to defer because I want to. Well, no, because I have. How many views did we get last time? Like 3,412,000 billion 560, whatever it was. I don't want to get back to anybody else. So I just let me go say that I was just very grateful for anything I got.
Okay, then I will have
Yeah,
I will
no
have my own
comment.
I'll have my own guesses on that.
You can guess. Yeah.
And I will go for this. Might be the last one. I've not looked at the last page. No, this is the last one. Best. In fact, I'll give you two. Best and worst gimmick.
Wow. I okay, and I know that's up to me to interpret, but best and worst gimmick. First of all, I think the best gimmicks are the guys with the volume turned up, the real guys. Pardon me. And Mark Lewin wasn't necessarily a gimmick, but he was a gimmick. He was Mark Lewin. He was a maniac, and he would. Are you familiar with Mark?
Don has told me quite a few stories about Mark and King Curtis.
Who has?
Don Morocco.
Oh, okay. Yes. And I knew Don I knew Mark when I was a kid, and I worked out with Mark when I was a kid. I'm talking 15, 16 years old, and I was working at the wrestling office too. And Mark was a maniac, and all that stuff. And he never talked on camera. He had Gary Hart as his gimmick. And when I would go over to Mark's apartment to pick him up to go to the gym, he's living on Telephone Road in Houston, Texas. Getting back to the best gimmicks, that was a place where low-income housing, the hood, less desirable place in Houston lived. And I always wondered, why is this big star living in I think it was a one-bedroom, might have been two, but I know his dad, Sid, was 86 years old. 86 years old when I was coming to pick Mark up. Mark had his wife and I think 3 kids in a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment on Telephone Road in Houston. And I would go in before we go train. We do our pre-workout ritual. And Mark was everything I thought a top star should be, because he had this life with his wife, 3 kids, his dad, 86 years old, in this small apartment, sitting around a table, and we're talking, and Sid's bringing up stories, and Mark's bringing up stories, and I'm waiting to go to the gym, and 45 minutes later, we walk out the door, and I'm having trouble finding my way through the, wait, was that my car? No, that's a bike, Tom. Get out. No. Is that, you know what I mean? And I'm going, holy Christ, how are we going to work out? We go to the gym, and Mark he doesn't skip a beat. He's superhuman. He's this larger than life guy. And then we get in the car, and he was so cool. So, but he was a gimmick. He was a maniac, and I'd heard all these stories, throwing people downstairs and stuff like that. That's a dangerous guy. He's a real deal. He is a guy who, hey, I promise. No, I promise, man. No lies here. I promise you, and just slit your throat. He never did it to me. But what I'm saying is that was the greatest gimmick that wasn't a gimmick. Jerry Graham was not a gimmick. I met him too. He wasn't a gimmick. He was who he said he was, the greatest gimmick for me. But then you want to talk about the greatest gimmick in wrestling, I think, is Hulk Hogan, because that was who he is. Hulk Hogan, man, he revolutionized. Stone Cold Steve Austin, that was who he is. That's a great gimmick. The Rock, that's who he is. Even Mick Foley, man, Mick was Mankind. He could just now be Mankind with that, and he could still be Mick. So those gimmicks, those guys, those kind of gimmicks are the ones I thought were the best.
And which were the worst? Conversely, they've got to be the ones that had no relationship to the person portraying them.
Yeah. I mean, the chorus would be the Ding Dongs. Yeah, I've seen them. not a good gimmick on those guys. And I have seen them when they came with the ring and ringing the bells and hunchbacks. I saw them come to the ring not too long ago too. I was going down YouTube and I found this in some crazy sidebar, and then I went, the Ding Dongs really wrestle? And then they'd ring the bell. Have you ever seen the Ding Dongs?
The tag team, the Ding Dongs. Yes, I have. Yes.
Oh, you mean there's others?
No, I was worried there was going to be some sort of drop. It was like, have you seen Ding Dongs? And I'd be like,
no. It was the tag team. Yeah. The tag team I thought was just, oh my goodness. So those are the answers I got for you. Yeah.
I'll just cut this tiny bit out. How much time do we have, or shall I wrap it up?
All the
Or
time as you need, man. I'm good.
oh, great. Okay, I've got. God, I tell you, I've got a ton of questions. But I always have a ton of
Yeah, I'm
questions.
good.
I always
That's
override.
fine.
So I'm going to go back to Houston a bit, and this is something that your brother Bruce has talked about, and I want to know your opinion on it. Do you believe that Gino Hernandez was Paul Bosch's son?
After watching the Dark Side, and after listening to Gino's mom, no, because Paul had a lady who he later married who looked so similar to Gino's mom. We used to watch, Gino was only a couple years older than me. And we would go every Friday night. Gino was there with his mom, and his mom sat in a special box where all the wrestlers' wives sat and all the girlfriends sat. Well, Paul had a mistress at the time who would come to the matches, and she had red hair. Gino's mom had red hair. They looked very, very familiar. This was where the speculation and rumor came in. And we all thought, Bruce told the story. I think it was Blassie who told him that Paul was Gino's dad. But looking back on it, it makes perfect sense because Valerie, Paul's wife later, and I don't remember Gino's mom, her name, but they look very similar. He was very nice to both. He would go over talk to her, say hello, then he'd come back and talk to Valerie and sit with her when he wasn't taping matches. But I don't now. I never really knew, obviously, but we all thought and speculated that it was because he treated Gino very, very well, and Gino was a talent, no doubt, and he had the look, he had the size, and he drew money. So it made sense that he took care of Gino better than anybody else, I think, who came from Houston. So it's possible. That's what we all thought. Why is he taking care of Gino so well? Well, it's because he was talent and he was drawn. Did he have an affection for Gino? No doubt. I think he was very key on Gino and wanted him to succeed. So, but as far as his dad, I don't think so anymore.
No, with Gino, so I really don't know much about him. I could have researched him more, but I thought I'd ask you. So, what was he? He was basically, heading towards the main event scene, and I believe, as the old saying of personal demons got in the way. But tell us a bit more about Gino and how talented he was, and anything else.
Well, Gino growing up was always a cocky guy. I mean, he was a cocky guy, no matter if it was wrestling, whatever it was. He just had that air of confidence, and it could be misinterpreted as arrogance. And it was a lot of times. But once he started wrestling, it was evident to everybody that he has something special. The people in Houston watched him grow up as a second, as Paul's assistant, and then as a wrestler, Paul Bosch. And his talent and his personality got over so much that everybody wanted to work with him. And he got shots at Harley Race. He got shots at Dusty Rhodes. Again, Mark Lewin, Jose Lothario. He shaved Jose's head the first time they had a hair versus hair match. Everybody just knew, Gino had the blonde hair and it was coming out in patches. And it was a hair versus hair match. Jose Lothario versus Gino Hernandez. Sold out the Coliseum because they knew Gino was going to get his head shaved. And when Gino beat Jose, it was deafening. Oh my God, people were crazy. So he had that innate ability to make people hate him, to get on your nerves, to just say the right thing, and then go in the ring, get his ass kicked, kick the babyface's ass, win by some skullduggery, whatever it was. And have people leave happy, just excited, because he was an exciting guy. He went over, he became really good friends with Von Erichs, and that's why he stayed there for so long, because he was good friends with Von Erichs. And Chris Adams came in. They formed a great team. And during that time, well, not everybody, but the majority of the boys were playing with fire. And when you play with fire, you're going to get burned. And I think that's what happened to a lot of guys in that time period. But Gino really was one of the more talented guys I've seen, came across. He was a top guy. He believed he was a top guy. He'd go out and make other top guys earn their respect. He would earn their respect for sure, and then come across as a star. He wore a suit everywhere he went. He looked the part. He was the part. So again, a lot of tragic stuff happened during that era, man. It really, really was. But it was, again, it was that culture. It was that time frame where people were going crazy, and you still had a lot of rock and roll bands, the rock and roll people going crazy out there. That was just, if you were allowed to do it, you did it. Yeah. Anything went.
There's more G.G. Allens than One Direction, sort of. Let's use that as an example. You mentioned that Gino, he got over immediately in the Houston area in Texas, and probably everywhere else he went as well. I wanted to make mention that quite a few WWF superstars came to Houston, I think, in the 70s. And for whatever reason, they didn't get like the huge reactions they were used to in the Northeast. So I don't know if this was style-wise, but I'm going to mention Bruno Sammartino, Ivan Putski. How come, was it just the style that they thought, that worked for the Northeast when they came down south and it just didn't translate, or what?
Well, I remember when Bruno came into the Summit the first time, he was on the card against Jay York, the same guy that Johnny Valentine listened. And or Mike York. I think it was Mike York, actually. Come think it was the Alaskan Mike York. And Mike was a good worker, but Bruno was the East Coast had the punch and kick style. The South had the high spot style. And you're trying to get Bruno, the former champion, and I didn't know Bruno was had lost the belt at this time. This was before, again, anything got out. But I think he had dropped the belt. Was it to Stasiak and then to Pedro in the 70s?
I think Stasiak beat Pedro and then Bruno beat Stasiak. I think that's the order.
Okay, who did Bruno drop the belt to get to Pedro?
Superstar. Oh, no, that was the second time he lost to Superstar, I think, wasn't it, in the late 70s?
Yeah. So Superstar beat him. And because I asked Paul in the back if Bruno was going to wear the WWF title out. Again, Bruno said, no, I've already lost the belt. He goes out and works with Mike York, and it just fell flat. Mike was not a main event guy. Bruno they knew about, but it just didn't work because the people weren't educated in Bruno's style. You might have seen him in the magazines. Paul built him up on TV, but I just don't think that at that time the Texas fans really bought into him. Ivan Putski is actually from Texas, from Houston. So when he was a star early on in the 70s, he was the big Polish Mighty Igor type character. Mighty Igor wore if you're familiar with him, strongman stuff and things like this. Well, Putski got over doing that, but when he went to New York and became a bodybuilder, it didn't translate. People wanted the old Dobra, what? I don't know English. And he was a little childlike gimmick, didn't know his own strength, played with little trucks, stuff like that. But when he came back trying to be just a guy, people kind of went, yeah, we don't care. So I think that was the case. It was just educating the fans on different styles, different ways. Just same thing when we went to Boston to work with the Rock and Roll Express. We're doing Southern stuff. They couldn't care less. They were so uninterested in booing us out of the building. It was like, okay, it's a different style. It's a different education with the fan base. So that's my opinion.
Horses for courses, I think. One more thing about Houston, and probably you went all over the place as well. But did you have any interactions with Bruiser Brody? And and you may have personal experience as well of one of the many times he may have screwed a promoter over.
No, I don't have any of that, but I do remember Brody very, very well, especially when we were growing up. Frank was always professional when we were around because Paul paid him well. And I think he was making really, really great money all over Texas. But when I first had a match in Dallas in the Sportatorium, I went with Mark Lewin. We went and flew out of Hobby Airport in Houston, Southwest. Got to the airport in Dallas. Brody and this person picked us up, and we got in the car and prepared to go to the arena. And Frank was always very cool. I think it was because I trained with Mark, and he knew I was around, so I never had any problems with him at all. But he was always struck me as one of those guys. Again, very nice, can be very, very courteous, but can be just the opposite too. I've never been around where he screwed somebody over, because my only dealings with him was actually in Texas. And he worked for Buck Robley in Texas. He worked for Slater in Texas, and he worked for a couple bookers. Gary Hart always too. When Gary had the book, they could get Frank in for a while too. But yeah, I was riding. It was always very cool to me. Never had any problem.
Yeah, was most of his fallouts always revolving around money? I mean, because obviously I'm sure he'd be happy to lose when the time called for it, but was it always just money based?
I don't know if it's all just money based, but I think uh, Bruiser Brody always knew his worth, and you have to know your worth. He knew he was a bad dude. He knew the reaction he was getting when people would scatter. He knew his reputation in Japan, and he knew what he did in the States would reflect anything he did overseas or wherever he went. So he was very protective of his reputation. You couldn't have Brody being beat over here because it would be picked up by the Japanese press over there, who at that time really had a stronghold on promotions, because that's how they were selling their matches and promoting their matches in the big magazines like Gong and the other ones over there. So it wasn't always about money. A lot of times, I think it was about how I'm going to lose if you want me to lose. An instance I do recall, I wasn't there for this, but Paul Bosch wanted Brody to work with Bull Curry, who I think at that time, was 65 years old. For God's sakes, he's an old man, and he's a little guy too. And Frank's like 6'4", 6'5", 280 pounds, and Bull Curry's about a buck 60. And at one time he was a tough guy because that's the way they sold it and that's the way the business was. But at this time, people weren't going to buy into it. So Frank goes out there with Bull Curry and does like 30 seconds, kills him. And Bosch was hot. And apparently they got it straightened out, brought Bull Curry back. They went 5 minutes, did a DQ, things like that. So Brody could be temperamental, just depending on who he was working with and what night, I guess.
Yeah, I know it's sort of his counterpart. I mean, some might say it's Stan the Lariat Hansen. It's very, very similar. But I always think Bruiser Brody and Abdullah the Butcher. I know they faced each other a lot, but also they were two of the stars who would just turn up and disappear. Once or twice a year, almost like Andre the Giant. Did you ever wrestle Abdullah?
Yeah, in Japan, Jimmy Del Rey and I did too. But by that time, he was way old too, and we weren't doing the bloodbath. Yeah, we wasn't doing the bloodbath in the tag tournament or the tag. It was a tag tournament, I think. The last time we went to Japan, Jimmy Del Rey and I. But yeah, I worked with Abdullah. I used to take Abdullah to the airport after the show in Houston, and one night I took Abby and Rocky Johnson. They just worked with each other. They waited for everybody to leave. They got in the car with me, and he was such a different guy outside the arena, no doubt. But inside the arena, he never broke. He never broke character. And if there was somebody he didn't know, he stopped talking right away. And again, that was in the time when, for the most part, they protected the gimmick. And in this situation in Houston, I was wondering, I was concerned about getting in trouble for taking these guys out, and they wanted to go eat together at a restaurant, Lee's Den, Chinese restaurant. I'll never forget it. And nobody bothered him, but Abby was one of those touring stars where he couldn't stay in a territory too long because his deal was slice and dice. Blood and guts every week for the sake of blood and guts gets old too. So you couldn't do that. Once in a while, yes, the most savage, insane monster coming to meet Brody or whatever it may be. Gary Hart bringing him in, or somebody's going to bring him in, an evil manager. And it was easier to sell back then because the guys really protected the gimmick back then.
Who do you reckon drew the? Probably it would have been Andre, but of the other touring stars who would show up in a territory for a week or two or three, who was the biggest amongst those stars?
Yeah, certainly Andre. I'd have put Dusty Rhodes in there too. And Abdullah, when he came in, I will say, he did pop the houses. He did come in, and people were curious. There was certainly a curiosity there. And Abdullah's deal was he would gimmick down the head and bleed, and sometimes he would hold his hand out and let the blood run in and drink it. And he spit it up in the air, but people would see it, and it was legit. So he definitely drew money. People definitely cared about him. But Andre, the American Dream, Brody, and Abdullah, certainly in the States, I think were top draws wherever they went for whatever territory.
So I think the first territory you worked as Mid-South in 1979. You were there for a couple of months before you go to LA. And it's your first territory. You're in probably one of the hardest territories to work, not for money, but, for having a taskmaster of a boss. A very, very hard road schedule. I mean, at any point were you like, oh my God, I've jumped into the fire here?
No, I wanted to do it. The allure of being on the road, man. Hey, I'm about to go on the road for like 9 hours. And I look, I worked Mid-South. I worked that area in that region. And I was going from Baton Rouge, sometimes all the way up to Arkansas or Oklahoma. And that's a haul, man. So you had to leave early. And one day, I don't remember what town it was, but one day my radio, as soon as I got in the car, turned it on, started the car, and the radio wouldn't work. I had a cassette player, but that wasn't working. I had silence for 9 hours. But it was a cool trip. I swear to God, that's how you know if you want to be on the road or not. Because, and even when I worked Mid-South, worked Louisiana full time, I was living with Tim Horner and Brad Armstrong. We had shared apartment, 3,000 miles, sometimes more a week. People would bitch about it, but I'm going, oh my God, this is the greatest thing on earth, because all you have to do is wake up, go to the gym, get in the car, and go to the town. You're living your dream. You're doing what you want to do. What's there to complain about? Nothing, man. Nothing more not mysterious, but more alluring and fascinating, intoxicating than being on the road. You don't know what you're going to see. You don't know who you're going to meet. That just intrigues me. It still intrigues me, because I want to know what's out there. I want to know what the magic trick and how it works, what the magic trick is and how it works. I want to know. I want to see people perform a miracle right in front of my eyes, and then let me point out the little details that's wrong here, wrong there. And that was going on the road was like. You go to some of these buildings that had a great backstage vibe. You find a cool dressing room or a cool little cubby hole, and you guys sit there and talk or play cards, whatever you did, man. But no, I never said, oh God, on the road. No, I said, yeah, on the road, man. Let's go. Let's find out who's out there to meet us tonight.
Obviously, Bill Watts is your first, one of the most famous bosses, one of the most famous bookers out there. But what was Jim Ross like? Was Jim Ross in the territory at the time as sort of his second in command?
Yes. Yeah. Well, not necessarily second in command, but JR was always had a place in the office, and he was always cool to me too, no doubt about it. And Bill Watts, man, there was a lot of stuff going on. I won't go into that. I can't explain why I was the way I was back then, but I just know I had made every mistake you can. Bill Watts, at the same time, I didn't get this until I left the territory and years later. And I had to really look back on not only just me, but all the guys he did things for and tried to make and help. He was looking for talent in everybody. He was looking for the upside in everybody. He turned me heel. He came back to me one night and says, hey, have you ever thought about being a heel? And I said, every day. He goes, yeah, I can read it when you walk out to the ring. We're going to turn you heel next TV. And I thought, oh my God, great. Because I had in my head and all these things that were going on in my life, and I let them, instead of doing what I really knew I wanted to do, I let them pile on, and I allowed them to grow. And even with all that, Bill Watts says, I want to do something. He did that with more than just me. He did that with so many guys that came in there and gave them an opportunity. And you either squandered it or you didn't. Magnum TA, man, he knew to make this guy with one move. One move. You don't go out there and waste 5 minutes trying to get him over. You get him over with one move. 30 seconds later, he's raising his arms. That's it. And that was, he looked for that in everybody. What can I get out of my talent? How am I going to maximize the most? And so I was very grateful. I'm still grateful, and for Bill Watts, just for whatever he did for me. And he gave me an opportunity to turn heel in a great territory and get a little experience before I went to Pensacola.
When Bill Watts was your boss very early on and everything, what was some of the? I mean, there's going to be the obvious ones like don't hang out in public with the person you're feuding with. But what was some of the other demandments of Bill Watts where he was just like, do not do this?
Yeah, babyface, not ride together. Yeah. Stay separate. No same hotels, no same bars. If you get in a fight and you lose, you're fired. That was one of the things he never said directly. I think I never heard him say it directly, but that was the rule. You knew, and the guys would talk about it. So. And most of the guys didn't get in fights. I mean, some did, but if they did, there's a famous, and I don't want to quote it, but there's a famous story with Matt Bourne and Hacksaw, where somebody attacked, I think, and Matt hit a fan who's coming to the ring and actually hurt him pretty good. I mean, there was a lawsuit and big problems, and Matt got fired, and hard feelings came out of that too, I'm sure. But Watts wanted to run his territory like a legit territory. And you might have to lay your stuff in, lay the chairs in, lay whatever you were going to do. You had to be not stiff, but solid. So I think just stuff like that. Don't ride together, kayfabe, keep the business good, protect the business.
You moved on to, so this would have been after Pensacola, I think. You were in the LA territory, Hollywood, NWA.
No, before.
Oh, before
Pensacola.
So when you are in NWA, Hollywood, and I think by 1980-81, the roster was pretty depleted at this point, but it's main evented with a couple of different people, but one of them is Mando Guerrero, and he's almost the forgotten Guerrero in a sense. So can you talk a bit about Mando and where he compares to with the other brothers?
Oh my God, I think he's probably, it would be Mando. It would be it would have to be Chavo Senior. I know Eddie gets is probably the most famous of all the Guerreros, no doubt. But Mando was such a talented guy and could do anything that all the Guerrero brothers and sisters were taught from a young age. He could do it smooth. He could teach you. That was the great thing about Mando is we got in the conversations about why to do things and how to do things in the ring and the dramatic. That's where I first really realized that it's the drama, it's the visual that you want to see. You can't always hear from another side of the room. You got to see it, and if you see this thing flailing in the wind, or you see somebody bleeding, or you see somebody asking for help, you get it. You don't have to go over and say, "Hey, I need help, please." You just say, "Oh, you can tell he's in peril. There's the drama. That's what we need to bring to it." Mando gets forgot about a lot, but he was a big part of the Guerrero tag team, and he was or the Guerrero family. But I mean, anytime they tagged, he was a huge part of that LA office. It was just business had gone down so bad, and they had done so much hokey stuff in LA. Man, it was crazy.
Well, that's actually my next question. So, is it Mike LaBelle's fault that the territory sort of just nosedived so quickly, or if you talk me through sort of the reasons for the downturn and what they tried to do to stop it?
I don't. Yeah, well, we're going back to promoters who the worst payoff guys. Mike wasn't going to pay a whole lot, and I was supposed to go to Portland instead of LA, and Gary Hart was the one who told me I'm going to LA for 2 weeks. But I think. Mike LaBelle had all the success with Tolis and Freddie Blassie early in the 70s. And then later on, it just became where I don't think a lot of people wanted to go to LA because Mike didn't pay. They wanted to go to LA maybe because of the beach, and that's one of the reasons I stayed there a year, because it was so nice, and I was having just it was a great time. But was it completely Mike's fault? I don't know. I know when I was there in '80, it was pretty questionable then. Weren't drawing a whole lot of crowds, weren't doing real great business, but I got some great experience and I got a Japanese trip out of it. So I was happy about that. But they had been going down for a long time, and I think that's why they were getting all the young guys and new guys, and a guy from England named Chris. Because why not? It's his first territory, gets you some experience. Nobody really see you. You learn, and the right thing, the wrong thing, and all that stuff. So I'm not sure if we can put all the blame on Mike, because some of the talent that came through was questionable.
Yeah. When you say hokey stuff that Mike booked, give me some examples, because I've genuinely no idea.
They had the monster like Frankenstein, and they had the professor come in and dial in his offense on TV. You're gonna lock up, then you're gonna kill him. You're gonna do that. What? Stuff like that. Yeah, hokey stuff.
Do you know what? That sort of brings a memory to me, because when Wrestling Observer came out and gave the awards out, was that that might have been the first one, the most distasteful promotional tactic or something, the Labelle Monster?
Maybe. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, I saw it in the 70s, and it was like, it was going from coast to coast, and we caught it in Texas. I don't remember this. It might have been whatever cable station was coming out, and or it might have been the UFH stations. I'm not sure, but I remember seeing the monster, and I don't recall the guy who was in the ring with him doing the calculating his offense, but that's what they said he was doing, and that was pretty hokey.
I mean, just from that description, it reminds me of the York Foundation with Terry Runnels and the computerized man of the 90s, Terry Taylor. And
Yes.
He used to tap on the calculator or the laptop or whatever it was to ask how to win the match, and it was inevitably take the laptop and smash it over the head of the of your opponent.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah. Somebody should try that today. Or wait, maybe they have.
I know there was laptops and GMs and stuff at some point. I mean, that was sort of one of those times where I wasn't watching. Because I mentioned it, and I will ask you about Japan in a minute, actually. I mentioned Dave Meltzer and the Wrestling Observer. Do you remember the first time you saw a dirt sheet in the locker room, and what was the reaction of you and everybody else, and who brought it in?
Oh, I don't remember the locker room. I remember the first time I actually saw one, and that was in LA with a friend of mine, Lloyd Lee. His wife was dancing at the Ivar Theater, and they invited us back to their apartment, and he said, have you ever seen this? And it was a Wrestling Observer typed out. And he showed me the LA stuff. And I went, whoa, okay, this is kind of cool. This is interesting, because he was talking about all the stuff, and he was talking about stuff that was happening in the back. And I thought, now wait a minute, how does that happen? And I've always felt this way, that what happens in the back should stay in the back. I know there's the National Enquirer, I know there's gossip magazines, I get all that, but that's a lot of hokey stuff too, and publicity that you want to have. And I know it's put out there, and this is where I understand this is how stories are made, and some is true, but a lot of it's not. But this seemed to be accurate. This seemed to be pretty true stuff. So somebody is leaking information. I've always just again, I can't explain it, but I've always just felt that if I'm not doing it in front of anybody, and it's not on camera, or we're not at work, or we're not at wrestling, man, dude, if I'm laid up somewhere and I'm having a relaxing evening with a friend, I don't need anybody to know it. Or if I'm somewhere out in public and I'm relaxing with a friend, whatever I'm doing, as long as I'm not committing a murder or a scene, then leave me alone. That's all I'm saying. Leave me alone. We all love publicity. We're all attention whores, and getting wrestling. We want to be in front of the camera. We want to be performers, no doubt about it. But when I see some of the stuff talking about these personal issues or personal demons with guys. At that time, I didn't see how it could help. I didn't see an upside to it. I just don't see, if the guys can't talk in the back with confidence, then you get the saying, telegram, telephone, tell a wrestler. I understand that part too, but at least it's still within the clique, still within the tribe. And Dave kind of just put it out there for everybody to tell. And I know that's his gimmick. I know that's his business, but I just always felt, if you told me something in the back or in the car, on the road, it stays there. That's just the way I felt about it. That's who I am.
Do you remember reading a news story in Wrestling Observer, or maybe one of the copycats or follow-ons from there, and thinking, how in the hell did they get this story about me?
Yeah, I did wonder that. And then I found out later, Brian Pillman, or found out later, Brody was talking to him. I found out later, Brody supposedly said to Dave, hey, make sure you get these stories out. I think it's important for everybody to know about this. So that, yeah, I would say surprised me. I wouldn't say it shocked me, but it surprised me. At the same time, then afterwards, I realized the guys get their narrative out there. That's the way to do it. I understand that. I do. There's something in my fiber. It's a wrinkle in my fabric that I can't go out and just tell you everything I know about everybody out there. And, hey, write this too. Hey, put me over too. I just don't feel it.
Was there a specific story that you were reading, or do you remember the specific story that you read that you thought, I really didn't want that one out?
There was something about a bust, and they went through the car and found pills and cocaine. Okay. I hadn't heard that yet. And I don't remember who it was. I'm trying to think and what year it was. It might have been in Portland. And somebody got busted or pulled over, and it was in the Observer that they found 2 grams of cocaine, some somas, maybe some pot, maybe some placidils, whatever it was. I'm reading this list and I'm going, check. I'm going, why? What if it wasn't broadcast on the news, if it wasn't put, I don't believe it was at this time. I don't know how he got his information. I don't know where he got his information. I just know that for me, I don't know why it was necessary to put, unless you're just a reporter and that's what the press does. I don't know why it was necessary to put out there this guy's business out there when nobody else would put it out there. And I know this is the Wrestling Observer. This is where the news should be. But once again, I didn't see the upside to it.
Okay, then. Well, I'll come back on Japan and your first tour of Japan. And I sort of interrupted you, or didn't follow on the question. How did you first get to Japan? So it was through LA, wasn't it? Did they recommend you?
Yes. Well, Fujinami came over. Needed an opponent, and I was the young, new opponent, and I was a rookie of the year in LA that year. Yeah, I have a nice black. Anyway, so Fujinami came over, and they actually went out, and I think gave tickets out in Chinatown or some of the little communities around there in LA. And we had a nice sized house because Japan was Timpita. Their show from LA had Baba and Inoki, and not Baba and Inoki, but they had Inoki and Sakaguchi and whoever else was over there at that time. And they did the TV. So based on that match with Fujinami, I got to go for 6 weeks in January. And yeah, it was great. It was very cool, especially for a 21-year-old kid coming over and just flying into Tokyo the first time, staying at the Kyoto Plaza and going to the Hard Rock and going to the Ginza and going to all these places. Korean barbecue. We had ate Korean barbecue in LA. Al Madrill introduced me to it. And but we got over to Japan, and Korean barbecue is incredible. So it's the best. So, all that stuff, and I'm living my dream. It was excellent being in a foreign country, flying over in business class. I mean, they took great care of you. Making incredible money for a 21-year-old kid.
How did you adjust to? Because obviously it's quite as westernized as it is now. But how did you adjust to the food situation?
I ate it. I actually loved it. I mean, I adjusted pretty good, and they had American food, or they had McDonald's over there too. So we ate that a few times, but for the most part, I was over there with Alan Quage, the Samoans, Bobby Duncombe, Tiger Singh.
Yeah, I've got a few more
Yeah,
actually. Tiger Jeet Singh, the Cobra, Fujinami, Bad News Alan, Ken Patera. There were a
yeah,
few of the
Patera.
names. Yeah.
Yeah, and they. God, the business was so different then. I'm 21 years old, man, and I've got my eyes wide open. And we're out drinking or whatever we were doing, and we get back to the hotel, and there's girls outside the hotel. And back then, there was a referee named Peter, and I don't think he was too fond of the guy chain, the American guys. So he was yelling at the girls to get out of here, but in Japanese. And Bobby Duncombe, I'll never forget this. He put his arm around Peter and walked him over and says, "Hey, it's okay. Don't worry about it. We're going to take care of it." When Bobby came back, this girl was looking at me, and he brought her over to me, and we talked. She didn't speak English. So, you know what I mean? And that was the first tour of Japan. I'm going, holy shit, it was a really cool time. So it was different, but again, it was cool. It was like the States in that sense, you know, people are people. And if you want to come upstairs and play checkers, we can.
The universal language of checkers.
Of course. Yes.
Did you ever
I didn't play chess. It was pretty simple back then. You move here, I move there. We go this way. I'll take your checker and you can take mine. King me, by the way. That's how we played.
And everyone's a winner at the end.
We all were winners and happy, yes. Just the next, she stayed the night, and the next morning it's snow on the ground. This is true too. I'm in Japan. I have no idea what city I'm in. And we wake up, and I realized, holy shit, I need to get her out of here now before anybody sees this, because this could be heat. The night before, yeah, come on, yeah. No. Next night you're going, oh shit, how do I get her out? We made the checkerboard up, and we came downstairs, and I'll go outside, and I asked the lady at the desk, is there any way to call a cab? No English. And so we walk out. Nothing on the streets. It's like 6:30 in the morning. And I'm thinking, I'm in a foreign country with one of their residents. I don't know how to get her home. And I walked, and she's following me. I'm walking, and finally, by the miracle and by the hand of God, there came a taxi. And put her in the taxi. I gave him part of my draw, whatever the hell it was. Take her home. So, that's a Japanese story for you.
Give me your favorite Japanese beer. And I know what mine is, but you've got to give me the list of yours.
I like Kirin. I like
Yes,
Sapporo.
Kirin. That's the exact answer.
Yeah, sure do. Very nice. Very nice.
Did you ever work with Inoki or Tiger Jeet Singh?
Yes. You had tag matches with them, which was very cool because you actually got to interact with them too. I didn't work. I don't think I might have worked. I don't remember working with Tiger Jeet Singh because we were all on the same side back then. So they usually had the guys working against the Japanese opponents. And I did work with Inoki. I thought that was very, very cool.
I'll ask you a few more. I'll go to the finale, and I will thank you very much again for your time. But I've got to ask, because you're in Georgia, Ole Anderson as a boss.
Goodness gracious. Ole was a great guy. To me, he was always, that's the thing, man. He never, ever yelled or screamed at me. I worked with Ole one time, and this is something I'll never forget either. And I've told Ole this practically every time I've seen him since. He can't remember a lot of things these days. But every time I get reintroduced to him again, he's always been congenial, always been very nice to me. So I've never had a problem though. But when we locked up in the ring, he said, "Oh my God, you were so loose. Oh my God, come here." You know what I mean? So I thought I was supposed to be loose. And I guess he appreciated it, but it was like, instead of saying, "Come on, tighten up, kid," he said, "Oh my God, you were so loose. Come here," and took me back to the ropes. But never had a problem. I think Ole was like Watts. And looking back on those guys, they had to be stern. They had to be gruff. They had to be this way because that's the way it was. That's the way they were brought up. That's the way the business was treated. And that's the way they wanted their guys to be seen. My opinion is this: when you're the boss, yeah, you have to be the boss. Can you relate to your talent? I think that's an asset. I think that's a plus. But you also have to let them know that they can't run over you. And if you start giving them an inch, they'll take 40 miles. I understand that now. I totally understand that, especially when you have to set the example and you've got to be the example. All they're asking you to do is go out and do what you're asked to do, and be on time, adhere to the rules that we have here. If you don't, you can go somewhere else. And I always appreciated that. No, if you were told to do or asked to do, there were no problems. And I never had any problems with Ole Anderson. I never had any problems with really anybody, especially in that position as a booker, because I knew that was their position and this is my position, to go out and do the best I can with what they give me.
So why does everyone I've spoke to? So I'll give some examples. Ricky Morton, Don Morocco, I've mentioned a couple of times. He never got on with Ole. Jim Cornette never got on with Ole, or he did maybe later on down the line. But what was the difference between you and all those guys where he liked you, and what was he specifically looking from an employee?
Okay. All the guys you mentioned were top guys in top positions. So there's going to be conflict. I wasn't figured in. I know that. And once again, that was all on me. That's all on talent that goes anywhere. It's up to you to get yourself noticed, figured in, and have ideas. I wasn't there. When you're on the card and there's nothing really to do except go out and have a great match or do whatever you can do, there was no reason to fuss. There was no reason to fight. When you're a top guy, I think you start seeing things from that top guy perspective, that you would do it this way. Ole wants you to do it that way. Well, screw you. I'm going to do it my way or I'm going to leave. So there's strong-willed personalities there. Jim Cornette, I think, respected Ole, certainly respected Ole, and had an insight into that grumpiness. And later on, look, you can't know what it's like until you arrive at that stage in life where you're going, why is he so grumpy all the time? Why is he bitching? Well, he's already had 30 years, 25 years of active wrestling with his guys, his crew. Then he sees this bunch of yahoos, these young yahoos, this young know-it-all Jim Cornette, this young know-it-all Ricky Morton, Morocco's out of his mind type stuff. And that's always saying that, not me, Don, by the way. But you get to the point where you're tired of arguing with idiots. And anybody that wants to be in wrestling ought to have their head examined, myself included. I should be at the top of the list of all the things I've ever lost. I miss my mind the most. But the thing is, you don't know until you arrive at that stage in life, that stage in the business where you go, oh my God, I was such an idiot. Why won't they listen to me? If they'll just listen to me, I know what's going to work. You don't find that out until later. Youth is wasted on the young. So when we're young, we screw up so bad, some of us, and some listen, some don't. So I think that was the main ingredient. Ole was on in his life, and the rock and roll come in. It's changing. It's not necessarily to his liking, and he's got a definite alpha male attitude. And that's why I think the conflict with these top guys come in, because they have their way, he has his way. The right way, the only way, does not exist. But if he's the boss, that's the way he wants it done. Mm-hmm. And you should do it that way. So
Would you like me to go to the finale now, or shall I chuck in a couple more questions, or it's entirely up to you,
I'm all yours, James.
man? Then I will ask you a few more questions, and this is I'm not sure this. I'm not even sure this is something that really can be differentiated that much because I'm not sure anyone really knew who was booking at what particular time. But who did you prefer as a booker, Jerry Jarrett or Jerry Lawler?
Jerry Jarrett or who? You froze up on.
Oh, sorry, Jerry Jarrett or Jerry Lawler.
And you said you're not sure if it was you could differentiate at the time.
Well, I didn't know maybe if it wasn't announced to everybody who was taking over the active, who was going to be the active booker for that 6 months or the next 6 months.
Well, that's a great question. That's a very good question. It was the Memphis territory. Are you familiar with the Memphis territory?
I've heard of a story or two.
Okay. I will answer by saying this. Of all the bookers in the Memphis territory, Jerry Jarrett, Jerry Lawler, and I'll even say Bill Dundee. They were certainly bookers of the Memphis territory. They certainly booked it. Yes.
That is the most mysterious answer I think I may ever have on that. Well, okay.
Yeah, feel free to use that wherever you want.
I'll give you this one. This might be a tiny bit easier then. Who's the better tag team, the Fabulous Ones or the Fantastics?
The better tag team as opposed to what? I mean, what would you drawing money or in the ring or what?
Whatever metric you feel like using, and there's I'm sure quite a lot of metrics you could use with both teams.
So we're playing ping pong again. Okay, cool, fantastic. Well, let me say it like this: the Fabulous Ones being the prototype, being the first, and they actually drew money in Memphis, and they had Jackie Fargo, they had all these things on their side. They were selling more in gimmicks than they were making with the company and payoffs. If that tells you anything. And Bobby and Tommy were, as the Fantastics, trying to replicate what the Fabulous Ones did. So I would have to say reality was the Fabulous Ones looked the part, they got over. So did the Fantastics, Bobby and Tommy. But I would have to say, I would think in my view, while Bobby and Tommy were fantastic workers and had the fire, Steve and Stan had that mystique. Steve and Stan had that aura of stars and the first ones to come out. So I mean, I've got to give the edge to Stan and Steve, the Fabulous Ones, because while Bobby and Tommy were tremendous and great, I don't think they ever did the business that the Fabs did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how many covers of songs are better than the originals, I suppose?
Yeah, there's a few, but you're right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the first ones usually get noticed and played more.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm sort of getting my wires crossed slightly, but were the Fantastics more in the mold of the Fabulous Ones, or were they more in the mold of the Rock and Roll Express?
More in the mold of the Fabs. They were trying to do the Fabs, with the Coattails and the Sharp Dressed Man song and things like that. So yeah, it's more of the Fabulous Ones.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I got that one right in my head before someone yells at me for not knowing my wrestling.
No.
With the Fabulous Ones, were you there when they almost reunited in the late 80s?
Yeah. I was there in the late 80s because I went to Smoky Mountain in the early 90s. So I believe I was when Steve and Stan came back, and they started wearing short trunks again. And Steve says, I'm a little nervous out here because I'm wearing short trunks for the first time I was there. Yeah. I don't know if they recaptured the magic they had the first time, though.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what then. I'll move on from Memphis. I'll give you a couple from Smokey, a couple of random ones I just want to ask you. Then we'll go to the finale. But I've got to ask, and this is something I didn't ask last time about Smoky Mountain Wrestling, strange Kentucky people. Do you have any particular stories about any particularly strange fans from the Smoky Mountain territories?
Yeah, well, there's a few of them. I mean, if you ever have the opportunity to travel in the Great Smoky Mountains, you'll find that not only are there hills up there, but there's people too living in the mountains, and we call those people mountain people. They and there's no other way to describe them. So when you live in that region, you live in on a big hill. We call them mountains here. Yeah, big mountain. You adjust. I think here in Tennessee and Kentucky, you have one lane roads sometimes up on those mountain roads, and if somebody's coming the other way, you either have to pull over or back up to let the other person pass, and it's just who's gonna do we do rock paper scissors? What do we do? You got to figure it out. So I mean, there are some colorful people living in the region of Kentucky that we have come across and entertained on occasion. If I can say it that way, I don't know if it's answering your question. I don't have any specific stories. I don't think I can tell them anyway, but we have visited and entertained. I say we, and I'll leave my partner in crime out of it right now. We've entertained a few times in the Kentucky, if you will.
What did the Mountain fans want to see in the wrestling ring that maybe the Northeastern fans, when you were in Survivor Series '93, they didn't want to see?
Wrestling fans here, wrestling fans in the Southeast especially, they love wrestling or wrestling. They do. They want to see their guys fight because they fight. They fight with their family. They fight with their friends. They want to see some wrestling. They want to see the bad guy get beat. They want to see the good guy win. They want to see some action. They're coming out of their houses, and this is what I tell people all the time, or ask them, why would anybody want to get out of their house, off their couch, and come out and see you? Why would they want to support you? Well, these people did if they were on TV, saw you on TV, saw the Rock and Roll Express, some old Danner, help Ricky Morton. That kind of stuff. They wanted to see the spots. They wanted to see the Gaga. They wanted to see a guy like Jim Cornette get his ass handed to him. In Boston, I think, on the Northeast, it was a lot of punch and kick and a lot of personality-driven characters. Personality-driven characters isn't unusual in wrestling, but it's just that, again, with Bruno coming down to the South, the Southern fans didn't get it. And, Jose Lothario going up north, I don't think the Northeast fans would get it. So it's just a matter of style, I think, and educating the fans to what is and what isn't.
Well, speaking of the fans, do you remember? I don't know if this was like an awkward time for you because you were trying to protect yourself and the wrestling business, but then Jim Cornette started doing the Smoky Mountain fan weeks. Do you remember doing any of the fan weeks? And what was expected of you and how to act with the lay people?
Well, yeah, but they were lay people, sure, but they were wrestling fans. They were hardcore wrestling fans. If you were going to come down for fan week, you loved wrestling, and we knew that. And Jim Cornette's a wrestling fan. I'm a wrestling fan. I've loved wrestling my whole life. I still love wrestling. I still love the business. I'm still intrigued. I'm still fascinated by it. But we knew when the people came in and got around. You didn't have to snarl and bark at everybody on the corner. You were professional and you engaged. And this was a time where Jimmy was also very engaging. He knew that the fans coming, a lot of them from the Observer, a lot of them from the Wrestling Fans International fan club, stuff like that. So these were fans who appreciated the art and also appreciated going to the arena, and yelling and having a good time, man. It's like when I go to a show these days, the last show that I remember I really reacted to was a gig on Broadway in New York City called the Blue Man Group. Have you ever seen the Blue Man Group?
I've heard that, yeah, Vegas stalwarts. I've heard of them, yeah.
Well, these were the New York guys. These were the original guys, and it was awesome. And I just appreciated the live entertainment, the live unpredictability of it all, and they didn't miss a beat. This was right in front of us, and they did not miss a beat. That impressed the hell out of me. So, but when I go to a concert these days, or I go somewhere, I want to listen and I want to hear it and I want to watch it. So I'm not going to get involved in screaming and yelling and singing along the songs. I don't do that, but I still get the feeling from it. And I think that a lot of fans would go and appreciate the group and then go watch them and sit in the arena and go, oh my God, you're getting the feeling now. You're getting exactly what you came for. And you're getting what you paid for. And I think that was the same way with the Smoky Mountain Fan Week. You would see us at the picnic place and eating hamburgers and conversing. And then you got to go and boo the living hell out of us that night and have fun doing it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that was the spirit of it all. And it wasn't necessarily about protecting kayfabe. They didn't ask us about all this mysterious, intricate stuff because they pretty much already knew. They read the Observer. By that time, people were pretty much, you had your smart group of fans, and those were the ones who came. Mm-hmm.
I'll ask one more SMW, a couple more, then we'll get to the main event. I keep saying the same thing, but
no, it's good. It's good, man. Don't worry about it. Yeah, you can cut that out too.
No, I'm going to keep. I'm going to keep it in for authenticity's sake. I'm going to keep it in.
Good job.
What was, and I genuinely don't know the answer to this at all. What was the relationship between Smoky Mountain and Jim Cornette and USWA and ECW? Was it like a fan versus fan rivalry, especially with the USWA?
I think. I don't know how it came about. I know that when we came back and we're going in and out sometimes, that it was a relationship between Randy Hales and Jim Cornette with USWA. I mean, they were on the opposite end of the state, obviously, but they were looking to exchange talent and freshen it up and things like that. Mm-hmm. So and I think that was where the fans came into it, East versus West, and it became that fan rivalry. So that was I'm not sure, I'm going to speculate. That was Jimmy's intent, to have the rival promotion Smoky Mountain invade USWA and USWA invade Smoky Mountain and things like this. So it was just a chance, an opportunity to trade talents and sprucing things up, if you will.
I'm going to give you something that I've got my own answer for, and it's a very specific answer, but I'll ask you this. Is, with WWE, when you were there, was there any particular storyline or action taken or anything else where you thought that WWE tipped from professional wrestling more than 50% over into sports entertainment, never to go back again?
While I was there?
Yes, it could be.
Or just anytime.
It could be any time. But while you were there, what you saw as well, maybe.
Well, in '85 when Hogan came out, and it was Hulk Hogan and Friends on Saturday night or Saturday morning, and Saturday Night Live, and WrestleMania. I mean, it was still wrestling, but it was definitely blowing up as cartoon. And so I saw it. I don't know, let's see, it's always been sports entertainment, but the crazy thing is, after Vince made the announcement, business just boomed, and you had Austin and Rock and all these cartoon characters, but badass characters turned way up. You had G.I. Joe come to life. They were storming the beaches, but they were actually coming out to the arena in Zambonis and things like that. And it was when you started playing the guy's music before he would hit the ring. That never happened. I mean, oh my God, he's coming to the ring. Can we do anything at all? Oh, we don't know what we can do. Oh, wait for him for the comeback. So that was kind of sports entertainment-y, if you will. That the music hitting the ring, and I think Hulk Hogan coming out and selling everything pretty much.
In the purist in you, when in 1985 you're in the territories, you must have been, watching this. Was the purist in you just going, "Oh my God, it's just so cartoony"?
Well, so yeah, actually, because we were thinking, "Oh, this can't last. It won't last. They're killing the business." but lo and behold, they didn't. And it made guys more money than ever. So again, who's right and who's wrong in that deal? The object, and I've always heard it, never paid attention to it, the object of the business is to make as much money as you can. And that's not the reason to get into it initially, because if it is, you'll be highly disappointed and highly hurt. So, but yeah, a lot of us, myself included, went, "Oh my God, how can they get by with this? I mean, it's hokey, hokey, hokey." But then you got to look back. You have to look back on the history of the business. There's been so much hokey stuff through the years that you ask yourself the same thing.
I'm actually going to give you mine, and I'll see your reaction to it and see if you agree in any way. Is for me when I was it would have been 1999, so I would have been 13. It was around the week that Vince Russo left, and all of a sudden, all the backstage segments went from the wrestlers or the performers acknowledging the camera to it basically being filmed like a soap opera, and everybody's telling their secrets and everybody's plotting against other people and people are getting attacked, but they're not acknowledging the camera that's being broadcast to however many million people. That's the one that always got me.
Yeah, that's kind of hokey too. If you've ever seen the Max Landis short, "Wrestling Isn't Wrestling," check it out. Because have you ever seen it?
I've never even heard of it. No.
James, this is an assignment. It only takes like 30 minutes. 30 minutes is what it is. I know you got a busy schedule too. But "Wrestling Isn't Wrestling" by Max Landis. You can find it on whatever streaming. If not, it's on YouTube, that's for sure. But there's a part of there where the guy goes, I watch the show, and I know every time you say this, you can double cross me, you're turning your back on me. So it's hilarious, but it's so true, just what you said. Because you're right there, the guy's filming, you got a camera right there, but you're telling me all these intimate secrets that nobody else can hear, but everybody else can hear. And that could be one of my. I just wasn't watching that closely back then. I was kind of like going, okay.
No, that was the bit for me where I didn't notice it at the time, but I did notice it at the time. And if I ever went back, when I was older and watching wrestling, I stopped there because that one would just bug me too much. I'll tell you what. Let's go to the main events, as it were, and it's the same every time. It's Firing Line, but it's Firing Line Part 2 because I give you some names. And you tell me what you think about them, if you think anything about them, and maybe a little story to go along with them at the same time. And now these are all guys from earlier in the career, and actually the person I'm going to say first is probably the most recent name in the list of people you probably met first time, and it's Gorilla Monsoon.
Gorilla. I met him. The first time I met him was when I was visiting Bruce. And he was a nice guy, a nice man. And then Bruce was getting engaged, and he wanted me to go fly to Vegas with him and his wife to be. So I did. I went to Vegas, and Monsoon was out there playing the Baccarat tables. Have you ever played Baccarat?
Yep, it's a game of chance.
I have
it's
never
50-50
played
game of chance.
Yeah, but he loved it. And so we went to the casino. He was playing. Bruce says, okay, we'll come back. We had dinner that night, and he was nice, but he was like poking and being gorilla, Then when it got to WWE and we were doing voiceovers, it was Monsoon, Michael Cole, and myself. And Monsoon would just hammer me on commentary. I'm thinking, what in the hell? Why? But he did. He was a very nice man, but sometimes if he had a thing where he couldn't leave it alone. If you threw something out in the water, he'd eat that, and then he'd come after what was next, and he never left poking. And he would make a smart ass remark, and I'm thinking, I know he's working, but is he? Is he really? I'm not sure. I do know, but I thought he was a very nice man. He had a different relationship with Bruce than he did with me, that's for sure. But he was fine. He was fine. He was Gorilla Monsoon the whole time, even when he was off camera. That was him. Smart ass remarks, and if you didn't have something come back, he'd hit you again until you had something come back, and I never did. So he just kept peppering me, man.
What was it about you that he latched onto on commentary?
Something about like you would do with the brain. You say, this guy right here, he's never wrestled a guy like that or never done something like that. I said, wait a minute, girl, I've been doing combat my whole life. Says, yeah, like highly unlikely or something along those lines, trying to put me in a different place. And I'm going, dude, man, you're burying me here. Why? And it just because that's what he does. And probably I wasn't a big guy and I wasn't in his wheelhouse. And then I don't know if that's what it was or not, but that's what he would do. He would say stuff to say like, you don't know. And well, but yeah, I do know. Come on, man. You don't know that I don't know, but I do know. Things like that.
Yeah. When you first got there, and someone said, "Go to gorilla position," did you go, "What?"
No, we knew it was called gorilla for gorilla.
Oh,
Yeah, I
right.
mean, no, everybody kind of I had a clue there before because I'd asked that before. Somebody told me that. I don't remember exactly, but I do remember when we said gorilla, we knew exactly where it was, what it was, why it was.
Skandor Akbar.
What a great man, too. He was one of the first guys I worked with. And how much time do we have?
Anytime you want. It's your show.
Okay. Well, so when I first started, I did a TV taping in Tulsa. And I think it was Akbar who was the booker. He was going over the matches that morning. It was in Oklahoma, and we did the matches and stuff like that. Jimmy Garvin and Brian Blair were there. We go to a show that night, and I'm in the locker room, and Garvin and Blair are talking, and Jimmy says, "Oh man, is tonight that one boot battle royal?" And Brian goes, "Yeah, I think it is." "Oh man," and they don't say anything, and they kind of continue on, and then Jimmy comes over and says, "Hey man, just want you to know the main event is a battle royal, but it's a one boot deal. Oki Shakina had boot on TV, so we booked this for a battle royal with everybody has to take off their right boot and go out there, and it's even Steven." So I'm going, well, yeah, I'm sitting there, and the referee comes over to me right before the battle royal, and he says, "Hey, I just want to tell you, if I were you, I'd take off your right boot. Just before you go out there, you knew what you want, but if I were you, I'd take the boot off." I went, "Oh, damn." And I went ahead, I laced my right boot, put it in my bag, and I did it, and all of a sudden I look up and everybody's already out in the ring. So I come out going to the ring, and as I'm walking to the ring, everybody has their boots on. Oki Shakina wrestled barefoot, and I knew this. He never wore boots. So they ribbed me. It was a rib. Akbar, as soon as I got in the ring, Akbar grabbed me and goes, "Are they ribbing you, son?" I said, "Yes, sir. Would you please throw me out?" He said, "Come here with me." And he threw me out. When I got to the back, they laughed and they said, "Good job." So I knew I had to do that, and Skandor saved me. I wrestled with him in Dallas. I wrestled one time during the Iranian crisis against Akbar in Dallas. They built him from Iran back then. And of course, he beat me, but he was always a nice man. One of those veterans who would talk to you and correct you, help you in the back. And I really liked Akbar. Good guy.
If you'd have gone out with two boots on, like you suspected it was all a setup, would they have gone, "Well, that one didn't work. Let's try and get him with a worse one"?
No, I think they would have, if they saw me again, they would have done something to my bag or done something to my boots or done something. And I just knowing Blair and Garvin as I do now and as I have through the years, Brian has always brought it up to me. Whenever I see Brian, he's the first thing out of his mouth is, "Hey, had any one boot battle royals lately?" Garvin forgot about it, and when they were going in the Hall of Fame, I called Michael and told Michael the story again, and I was out with my wife. And Michael called me, "Say, I got Jimmy Jam here. He wants to hear that story about the one boot battle royal." So Jimmy says, "I don't remember." I says, "Yeah, dude, let me remind you." And then he did. He remembered. But yeah, if I wouldn't have done it, I was a rookie, dues, and I thought I've got to do this. If I don't, there's certain disaster waiting for me. If not now, down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'll give you the next one then. Luna Vachon.
Luna was a great lady. She really was, man. I think she was really misunderstood. I haven't seen the Dark Side of the Ring episode yet, but I heard it's out. But I heard some stories about her growing up, and with a dad like Mad Dog Vachon, or just being a Vachon clique, man, was had to been brutal. But she was the opposite of what you saw on TV. But I've also seen her when we got off the elevator one day at a hotel. We were talking very nice, and got off the elevator and came face to face with someone she didn't like very much. And it went from, we opened the door open. I'll never forget. And this fellow standing here, I won't mention his name. And as soon as it opened, she looked, says, "You mother," and she went right after him. Don't know why. Found out later. And we pulled her off. But she just went from that to that. I mean, she went from, "Oh, yeah, where are you going to eat? Oh, cool. Have you guys gone to the gym today? Great, great. Yeah, well, I'm about to meet Sherry down here. We're going to, you mother." And she just went after him, and we pulled her off. And she calmed down. I couldn't imagine. She did things her way, no doubt. She was one of the sweetest ladies in the world, unless she did it wrong, and she wasn't going to let you forget that.
Yeah. The next one is Bruce Hart.
I met Bruce on a couple of occasions. I don't know Bruce well enough to comment. He's always been cool to me. We had a great conversation at WrestleMania one time, and it was also Keith, I think, who was sitting there at WrestleMania as well. And somebody saved me from that conversation because I was talking to Bruce. I was sitting with Keith, Bruce, and a couple of the other Hart brothers, and we're in catering talking at WrestleMania. And I think it was Keith who said something, and I said something back controversial, knowing it was controversial, knowing I was throwing my lure in the water and seeing if he bit, and he did. And it went on 20 minutes, and somebody was watching this and dialed my phone, and I answered, and they said, "You need to get away from the table now, or you'll be there another 7 hours. You need to leave now because he will not leave you alone." And I said, "Oh, okay, I've got to take this call." And I walked catering, and they met me right after. I said, "I had to save you because you were not going to win with this, and he would keep you there for the next at least 4 to 5 hours." And I said, "No, he wouldn't." Yeah, he would, because he knows how to do it. So.
Do you know what the comment was, or do you
I
decline
don't recall.
comment?
It was a political deal going on at the time. I remember that because we were discussing politics. You never discuss politics or religion while you're eating. I know all that. Mm-hmm. I get that, but it was a lot of fun because I kind of stir the pot and I poke the bear, and I don't really care. I mean, it's a conversation, and I'm having fun. You might get a laugh out of it, you might not. But this person suggested I might want to get away because we get really heated because he does the same thing I do. He kind of hits a flashpoint, and then he moves on. Then he'll throw water on this, but he'll light another fire right over there, expect you to go to it. So,
Sean Waltman.
Sean Waltman, I've always got along with too. He's another great guy who loved the business. You can see it in his work. And we worked with him in a tag match a couple times. But I thought he was always a talented guy. Still think he's a talented guy. And I've always appreciated him, always respected him, and thought everything he did in the ring was on point. Really did.
Buzz and Brett Sawyer.
Well, Buzz, again, see, I like guys like Buzz because there's no pretense there. What you see is what you get. They'll tell you, I'm not the guy you want to trust with money or anything else. Just you're putting your life in your own hands when you ride with me. It's up to you. Do you want to ride or not? It's up to you. And Buzz was very straightforward. As long as you're straightforward with it, no problem. As long as you didn't get where he might have woke up on the wrong side of the bed, I guess you're okay. I rode with Buzz a couple times. I saw it right off the bat. He's one of those guys. He's going to tell you what he thinks, whether you want to hear it or not. But I appreciated that. Brett was the same way. Brett was I don't know how passionate he was about wrestling. When I met him in Portland. It might have been, sometimes you get to that point where you're not as enthusiastic as you once were. And I think that might have been the case with Brett. So, but I like Brett too. I got along with Brett, man. I really did. We had a lot of fun times too. A lot of fun times.
You mentioned this guy's name earlier, so I'll bring him again. Al Madrill.
Al Madrill was a miserable son of a bitch. He really was. He was 30 years old. I was 20. I could not understand why he was so miserable, why he was just, didn't want to help anybody. And later on, I learned why. Later on, I learned some of those things that, like I said, Dave didn't need to talk about or say. It wasn't about Al, by the way, but I learned, some people have things in life, why they are the way they are. And then you go, oh, now I get it. And Al was one of those guys. He was miserable. I told him one time, I worked with John Tolis, and John would chop the hell out of you. You'd feel it, you'd sting, but it wasn't hurting me at all. It was, I'd feel it. It was wrestling. And I said, dude, he chopped the hell out of me. He looked at my chest, goes, maybe you ought to tell him, say, hey, John, come on, man. And I thought, no, but Al would be that kind of baby, like, hey, man, could have hit me harder. I'm thinking, no, man, you don't say that to somebody. You just don't. And especially a veteran, especially guys out there and testing you and seeing if you can take it. And I thought, no, man, but why would you even say that? But that was Al. He was a miserable guy. And I liked him. We laughed. Well, we did. We had fun times too. But at the same time, he could be just cantankerous and grumpy, and I didn't like it. But he didn't care.
I've got someone else grumpy coming up in a couple of names' time, but I'll give you this one. Gentleman Chris Adams.
Well, again, Chris Adams and I had a great time. All these guys I had fun with, but Chris, again, here's another story. One time, I think it was myself, Al, Victor Rivera, and Chris. Chris and Victor were in the back seat. Al and I were in the front seat. And we were partaking in the peace pipe, and Victor didn't smoke back then. Victor's drinking, but Chris, who really didn't smoke back then a lot, he took the peace pipe and took a big drag off it and blew it in Victor's face. And I thought, oh Christ, because Victor was a little salty, and Victor was one of those guys you weren't sure about. I wasn't sure about. Victor was a little crazy, I thought. And when he blew smoke in Victor's face, he said, hey, don't blow smoke in my face. I don't like it, motherfucker. Whoa, yeah. And he meant it. The way he said it, he knew he meant it. So Chris didn't. But I kept looking at Chris because Chris was already reeling, and you weren't sure what to expect. He was the greatest guy in the world, but man, when you twisted the cap, sometimes that gremlin came out, and there was no putting him back in the bottle. So, but Chris was easy to get along with, and when he came over, he brought Gene, and they had a place on the beach at first. We go over, lay out in the sun, have fun. But once again, it was the 80s, and it only got more intoxicating as it went on, if you will.
Well, that may maybe answer some of the speculation. The question I'm going to ask you really is, how come Chris wasn't a bigger star after Dallas? Because he seemed to have everything going for him.
Yeah, except the plane ride. Are you familiar with the plane ride?
No, I'm not.
Oh, where he punched a attendant and did time in jail.
No, yes, I'm not.
He did some time in prison. I think 6 months, might have been a year. And that was one of the reasons why I don't think he got any farther than he got. Sometimes when it's on your record and you haven't internet shows, you don't want to take a chance on a guy. I mean, oh my God, the plane ride from hell. That was Chris before the plane ride from hell. He was on the plane ride from hell, punched the attendant, and they had to strap him down and put him away for I don't know if it was a year or 6 months, but it was a good time. Yeah. But I don't think he ever recovered from it.
Actually, something I did write and then scrubbed out. But I didn't think you were on the plane ride from hell.
No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't. I wasn't on the plane ride with Chris. No, I wasn't on that plane ride. But Chris, you get drunk on a plane, Have you ever seen The Wolf of Wall Street?
That is exactly what I was thinking of, and I was going to
Yes.
mention it, and I didn't want to interrupt.
No, that was it. That was that. And you wake up going, "What? What did I do?" But yeah, I think he woke up in a cell.
I won't quote
Yeah.
all of it, but he said, the captain was very upset.
Yeah. Imagine. Can imagine what they do? What they do? Yeah, you take stuff and you black out, and that was not a good time to be.
I've got, I think, 5 now. Downtown Bruno.
I love Downtown Bruno, but the thing is this: he misrepresented me in his book. He thought, here's another story. This is the but look, it was done. That's going to sound terrible, but it was done not to be mean. Here's the situation. You tell me. So Danny Davis, Jeff Jarrett, and I were wrestling in Dallas, and we had a.
This is Nightmare. Sorry, not Dangerous.
No, Nightmare. Danny
Yeah.
Davis. Yes. We were wrestling in Dallas Friday night, and they had booked us in shows Saturday, and they were going back to Nashville on Sunday. So from Friday night, Jeff had Bruno drive his car to Dallas and pick us up on Friday night after the show in the Sportatorium. And Bruno, before he got to the Sportatorium, did not gas up the car. So we went one way, and there were no gas stations open. And we kept going, and Danny Davis is getting hot. And we got had beer already iced. He had the beer already iced down. But Jeff and Danny, I didn't care. I wouldn't give Bruno a beer. Said, you can't have any beer until we find gas. They were hot at it, but playing hot at it. Danny had finished half a beer. And then he made more beer in that bottle, put the cap on it, put it in the ice, let it get cold. When we finally got gas, now you can have a beer, Bruno. Here. He thought it was me. So he writes that in his book. He says, I was the dumbest guy I ever known, all this shit. Oh, okay, whatever. So I asked him. I saw him after the book. I said, Bruno, why? He said, well, because you pissed in a beer bottle and gave it to me. I said, no, I didn't. It was Danny. It wasn't me. So, well, you sure didn't stop him. Bruno, come on. So anyway, but no, I love Bruno. I love Downtown Bruno. He really was a good guy, and he does a lot. He still does a lot for the guys there. So yeah, he's a really good guy.
Yeah. How was he? I think you were in Memphis at the same time. How was he as a replacement as the top lead heel manager for Jimmy Hart?
Well, I don't know if anybody could replace Jimmy, but Bruno was certainly a definite heat seeker, definite heat magnet. He really was. He could just get on there and be that slimy little hairball and come out and talk stuff and manage Sid and manage a lot of the other guys around there. But I don't think he could ever replace Jimmy Hart. But Bruno had his own place. Bruno made his own place. I thought he did a hell of a job.
This is the miserable name I mentioned from before, Bob Sweetan.
Yeah, I never ran across Bob. Knew all the stories, and I later on in years I've heard the stories, from JR about not from him, but heard him on his podcast talk about Sweetan taking advantage of the young guys and just being a complete turd, man. I mean, there were guys like that in the business, but for the most part, the majority of the guys were there because they love the business and not being just complete degenerates. And I think Bob was a complete degenerate, especially all the other things he did. I can't imagine that, but that there again, we're all wired differently, and you always have to be aware of what's out there.
Wrestling attracts the differently wired. I think you've made mention of before.
I think I have.
Yeah. Jack Victory.
Oh, man, I'm surprised Jack didn't go farther because he was a talented guy. He had it. That was a guy who really should have gone farther because they put him with the sheep herders and he got even more experience with those guys. And how could you not? But I would have loved to see Jack go on and be a great heel in New York somewhere, because I thought he had all the time and could talk.
He always reminded me of, Rutger Hauer out of Blade Runner. He sort of had that same, the bleach blonde look kind of thing. I don't know if they could have done anything with that, but that's who he always resembled.
Well, yeah, he looked the part. He certainly looked the part. And when he got in the ring, he knew how to work, which is a blessing too. So yeah, he was a great guy. Very great guy.
Penultimate, we mentioned the Colonel Robert Parker, but this time Tennessee Stud.
Ron has just moved back in this area, and we did a stud cast with him, not just earlier this week, Wednesday. And I've always liked Ron, and I've always liked Robert. I like the whole Welsh family, the Fullers and Jimmy Golden. They've always been really good people to me. But Ron would sometimes be maligned, and I don't know why, because he's always been a straight up guy that I know about with most people. And he told a story about working with Bob Armstrong somewhere in Alabama this past week. And he walks into the locker room. It's a match with Ron versus Ric Flair for the world title. And he beat Bob for the tournament to face the world champion. And he walks in the locker room, actually, Bob goes on a promo and says, look, I just want to be a part of this match. I got to be a part of it somehow. I know you're going to be the world champion. I want to referee that match. Bob Armstrong, babyface. Ron Fuller, babyface. Ric Flair, heel, world champion. Big match. Going to sell out this arena. Bob Armstrong's the referee. There's no way Ron's not walking out the world champion that night. Everybody knows Ron Fuller is going to be the new world champion. Bob Armstrong refereeing. What could go wrong? So Ron said he walked in the locker room to give Bob and Flair the finish. And he says, okay, you wrapped up in the Fuller leg lock. And he's starting the finish. He's telling them all the finish. And he says, Ricky's just sitting there shaking his head. Then he says he stands up, walks around the locker room as I'm still telling him the finish. He goes, and then when I got you in the Fuller leg lock, Bob's going to drop an elbow on me. Then Rick says, oh, my God. He says, and then you guys put the boots to me and you get your heat. And so Ron said, he looked at Flair, says, you got it? He goes, God, Ron, you're going to get us killed out there. So, and I don't know if he was telling the story for effect, but I could see Flair saying that. I could see Ron laying out the finish, because I've heard Ron lay out finishes, and they lay it out in every part. And if you have a discussion, let's discuss this part. Let's discuss that part. When he got to the final part, he went, oh, wait a minute. I don't know about this, but they went ahead and did it. So all those guys, Ron Fuller, Rob, Jimmy, they're all great storytellers, not just in the ring, but outside the ring too. And I thought Ron was tremendous in laying out his vision and what he wanted to do. So Ron Fuller's always been great. And I think he's a smart guy too.
Did you ever hear any of the stories, and this is very vague in my mind, so correct me if I'm wrong, is that the Fuller family would make a habit of buying dying territories, bring in stars. You're already smiling, so you can tell. You carry on.
Well, no. Ron asked me one time. See, when I went to Continental, it was already during that time frame of houses. Houses were still on the rise, but it was during that time when Crockett wasn't letting the world champion go out of his territory anymore, and things like that. So Ron, I believe, there were equal partners, but I think Ron might have held at one point to break a tie or whatever. It was Robert Fuller, Jimmy Golden, Bob Armstrong, Ron Fuller, and Roy Lee Welch. Might have been some other guys in there too. But when Continental got to the point where it wasn't drawing like it used to, Ron sold it to David Woods in Montgomery, Alabama, and was going to get out of the wrestling business. But he went up to Knoxville and opened up another territory, USA. So Ron asked me, he said, what do all the boys think? I said, well, everybody knew and could see the landscape of the way the business was going. The territories were dying. The territories were going away. And I looked at it as, which sucker were you trying to sell it to? And he laughed, because Ron knows. Ron's not a dumb guy, and he knows how the presentation. Like, David, we got a great thing here. You got to buy this wrestling company. You're gonna get your TV here. You're gonna get a wrestling ring. You're gonna get all these wrestlers. You're gonna make $1 million. You're gonna make probably $1 billion. He's a great salesman. So yeah, I think that would be fair to say that he would buy dying territories and sell it to somebody else for a lot more and add value to it. You know, it's all in the presentation. But I admire Ron. I really, really do. I think he's I think he's still to this day a really smart guy.
I love that I got halfway through that sentence and you knew exactly where I was going with that as well.
Yeah.
I'm gonna I'm gonna give you the final name, the Iron Sheik.
Oh, the Iron Sheik. See, he wasn't as insane when I met him the first time. When I was a kid, he was in great shape, 265. His name was Muhammad Farouk. But he was authentic. He was that real guy from the Olympics, the alternate on the Olympic team, the Shah of Iran's bodyguard. I still don't think he knows the truth about what happened to his family. He left Iran, had to leave his family there. So, I mean, his mother, his father, I think his sister, he might have had a brother too. So he's actually lived through this incredible life and seen some incredible horror scenes and has experienced things that you or I never had the occasion, I guess, to experience. And then his daughter being murdered. I mean, I can't imagine what is going on in his head. But once again, I can only judge how he's around me. And he was an entertaining guy, even later on in life when I saw him. And Sheiky Baby. He wasn't Sheiky Baby in the 80s or 70s. He was the Muhammad Farouk. And then he's the man who beat the Hulk Hogan, that jabroni, in the Madison Square Garden, most famous arena. So, you know, I've always had admiration, love, respect for the Sheik too. He is like no other, and I hope there never is another one like him.
Just one thing before I close this down, and there's one question I didn't get to that I will get to now, and it might even have a very quick answer. But I was wondering, in all your experience, who was the one big superstar in wrestling who always retained, a kindness and giving nature to the guys who they worked with, and was always one of the boys and never changed?
I think Brad Armstrong. He never changed. Yeah,
if I go to
Bobby Eaton again.
Sorry, if I go to more like the Rocks, the Austins, the Hulk Hogans, the sort of mega stars, who are the ones who maybe let it go to the
never
head?
Changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't think Austin's changed that much. He just has a lot more money. Rock's the same way. Those guys have never changed. And I say that I haven't, man. I don't text a lot of people. I don't call a lot of people. The people I call are very few and far between. But just the other day, and it got me thinking about Austin. We were talking, and it might have been on a podcast, wherever it was. We're talking about Austin. And I told myself, for some reason, I just have to text Steve, say, I don't want anything. Just say hello. Hope that all Paul is doing well. Just say hello. I know what it was. Somebody passed away. Somebody died. It might have been Bobby. It might have been the most recent thing. I'm thinking, God dang, man, all the guys I've known, all the people that I really never reached out to because Bobby was in Nashville. Good, wasn't in good health, but I never reached out to him, had his number, never text. Saw him at the Bobby Eaton appreciation show they did for him last year. So I just said, well, hell, Steve and I lived in the Congress Inn, travel up and down the road. Don't want anything but to say hello. Hope you're doing well. That was it. Got a text back the next day. Hey, hope everything's going great. Just contact, because you go up and down the roads, people, and then all of a sudden you go off the road, you don't know them anymore. That's not true. That's not true. Again, I can't explain why I was always the way I was, introverted, didn't know, didn't say a whole lot. But these days, I'm thinking about it more and more. When Bobby passed away, I thought, oh my God, man, if I could have just had one, if I could just have one more conversation or just laugh, uh, that's what I want to do. So Rock, I don't think has ever changed. I've talked to people who come across him, ran across him in business, still the same guy, which is incredible. But why would it be that incredible? I ask myself too. If you're this person now, you're still that person with just a lot more money, a lot more power. What do you do with it? What's your character say about you? And I think both with Austin, Rock, uh, those two guys in particular, their character has always stayed strong, and they're still the same guys. They're still the guys who love and appreciate what they've got. They came from nothing. They came from hard times. They're the examples to look at. They're the guys to look at and say, if they can do it, I can too. You have no idea the hardships Steve Austin went through. You have no idea. Rock's talked about it, but we didn't live it. He had a dream of going to the NFL. Didn't make it. Played in Canadian Football League. Came home with $7. Austin, going to be a superstar. Going to be a major wrestling star. Whoa. Then he's peeling potatoes in his room with more roaches and ants and spiders and all kind of insects in it, and stealing his potatoes. He had a platoon of ants carrying off the whole bag one time. I mean, these guys lived it. These guys went through tough times. These guys did everything they felt they needed to do to be successful, and they weren't. It was not handed to them. They had to fight, scrape for everything they got. And I think they're still those same guys today, and that's why they're still successful today, because they don't rest on their laurels and they keep working their ass off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dr. Tom, I'm gonna thank you for your time, and what an amount of time it is. Again, we've done another marathon thing, and I can't thank you enough for all the time you spent. Before we go, hit us with some plugs, and I know you've got your book, or you may have your book near. I'm gonna put that on every single clip when you talk. Okay. So we'll get that book out, and hopefully we'll get more people buying it.
Well, I hope they'll buy it too, but there aren't any pictures in it, so you got to be able to look at it and read. And all this really is this is a compilation of suggestions and ideas and a curriculum. So it's a wrestling curriculum. Suggestions, actually, I'll read the title. It's a complete 1-year training curriculum and guide for beginners and seasoned pros. This is a pro to help the aspiring pro get to the next level. So it's just some ideas, just some suggestions, and drills in here. So it is on Amazon, but if you go to jpwrestlingacademy.com, the front page has a place where you can actually just click and order this book from Amazon. And also you can get an autographed copy, but if it's overseas, you have to figure in postage as well. So it might be better even if it's if you go to the front page, jpwrestlingacademy.com, you can order everything that's necessary on the front page.
Mm-hmm. When are you accepting new students coming in as well?
We are accepting. Thank you for asking. We just had our last class come in and start. We just finished the second week yesterday. Our new class starts in 2022, January 3rd, goes through March 25th. And once again, you can also go to our website that gives you all the information about the next date starting. And our email address is jpwrestlingacademy@gmail.com. We can now give you any information you also want to find out if you email us there too. jpwrestlingacademy@gmail.com.
And if anybody's watching this and they're wondering what school they should go to, I believe you've got some glowing references from now current superstars and former students as well.
We do. We've been very fortunate, very lucky to have guys come back and visit the school. Maddie Neidhart came back about 3 weeks ago, and man, she's been a friend of ours for a long time. She trained with us in FCW, and she has really supported the JPWA. Great person to have, great lady in the business, and somebody you can really learn from and listen to. But we've had guys come back like The Undertaker, and of course Glenn stops by, Kane stops by every now and then too to check out our guys. Heath Slater, Sinbo D, my God, Mark Henry came by. So we're very fortunate, James. I'm happy and glad that guys want to come out and check out the Jacobs Prichard Wrestling Academy.
And that is, I think so many people say that, that's one of the best schools ever. I will thank you so much for your time once again. I'll give my own plugs. I've got a couple of books out on Amazon, and I even prepared them this time. Owen Hart, the King of Pranks, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Wait, you did that?
I've written these 2 books, yeah, and they're massive.
Whoa! What'd you write on The Rock? That's the recent history of The Rock?
That is the entire history of The Rock. It is.
Oh, okay.
Hang on, there you go. You can even see the back there.
Oh my God!
And,
wow. Okay.
Let me have a look how many things. 335. There you go. Pages I did on that one. And the Owen Hart book is 450 something. So I'll tell you what. When I write, goddamn, I write. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
And I will. I will never write another book again. That was just the amount of time it took me.
Yes, I used to write articles. I used to try and write books. I did. I really tried. And I had to do this out of necessity. But yeah, it is a definite experience in endurance, I think.
Yeah. One of them took me 9 months, and that was 9 months full time. The other one took me about 7.
How many hours a day would you write?
On the Owen Hart book one, at some point, so I've never written anything in my life. And then I just thought, well, I can do anything, so I'll just try it. And then I did, and then...
Well, wait, stop. You froze. You didn't write anything in your life?
Sorry. I've never written anything in my life, and then I thought, well, no one else has done it, so I'll have a go. And at some point, I was writing 70, 80 hours a week, and I was a miserable bastard to be around.
Yes!
Well, let me tell you.
Were you drinking?
Yeah, more than I was, yes, I was.
It worked for Hemingway. Yeah. Okay.
It gets a bit more scribbly.
You don't listen. You don't get a poem from Ice-T, and you can't write a book with Ice-T either.
Oh my God! Oh, I'll tell you, that was. Do you know what? I'm glad I've done them. I'm really glad I've done them, but I'll just never do it again. But it's like one of those things where I just thought, you know what? Before I die, I want to be able to say I've done this, 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 and this. And one of them was to say write a book. And I listened to a some shoot interview somewhere years ago where Sean Waltman said something to the effect of somebody should really write a book on all of Owen's pranks. And then I thought, well, he's not written it. It's been 10 years, so I'll do it. And that sort of just served as the basis. And then all of a sudden, 9 months later, and then...
So did you get everybody to participate for references and stuff like that?
I emailed you, in fact, a couple of years ago, and you said you didn't really have any proper stories apart from like one minor one where you're in a hotel or something.
Yeah, that was it when he called the front desk. Yeah.
But
so, I mean, I witnessed some old stuff, but yeah.
Yo, you never told me. You never told me you witnessed one. I might have put it in.
Well, yeah, but I think that was when they put the Godwin's sheep in Vince's office.
Yeah, that one's already covered. I think I can't remember. Anyway, 160.
Yeah, they were sheep or goats. It was whatever it was with the Godwins.
It was pigs because it was the pig. It was the pig pen thingy.
That's what it was. Yes. So anyway,
it was in your house, the pig pen thing. I tell you, if it's Owen Hart, I'll know exactly what you're talking about. But you know what? For now, thank you very much, Dr. Tom, for joining us. Dude. Anytime, and do you know what? You'll regret saying that because I'm going to take you up on that as well. But for now, thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching once again, and we will catch you again next week.